off here momentarily. So make sure you are ready, relaxed, and a good way to support this show. Oh, there's the lovely Cosmic Fleur. There she is, everyone. Give everybody a wave, Cosmic, because we need it. Oh, you'll like this one, Seriah. Mr. Cowley, welcome back to the show. Oh, Mr. Cowley loves his spaced out radio. Yes. Hey, when you have a listener with the last name of Cowley, how can you not do that?
Yeah, no kidding.
Exactly. Game Vet, good to have you here, my friend. National Memorial, good to see you back. And yeah, I think we're almost ready. Once again, a good way to support this show, everyone, is if you're new, give us a thumbs up, thumbs down, thumbs sideways, and hit that subscribe button, ring that bell. Also, the super chat is open. If you feel that we deserve some of your hard work, we would appreciate that as well. The gorgeous Kim Jellin is here, everyone. Give her a wave. She likes a good wave every now and again. Rachmaninoff, good to see you. I know I'm missing somebody here. Rooted in gorgeous sacredness, there she is. And let's get this thing going here. We're on in 7 seconds. From the mountains of central British Columbia to you listening around the world, this, my friends, is Spaced Out Radio. I am your host, Dave Scott, sitting in the captain's chair of SOR headquarters. We welcome you to tonight's show on our terrestrial affiliates around North America, digitally on TalkStream Live, Revolution Radio, and KPNL. All of our archives are free for you by going to youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Just do me the favor, hit that subscribe button. You can follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and on Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show. Our website is spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you, including rocking out to Bumblefoot and reading up on Captain Shirk's SOR Newswire. Tonight's show is brought to you by Chive Charities. Help make the world 10% happier by visiting Chive Charities today. You can find them on our website. Oh, we got a good one for you tonight. Seriah Azkath has been studying the unknown for over 30 years. He's currently working on a couple of books about it as well. His studies have spanned the world of the unexplained, from UFOs to lost civilizations, and it's been a strong focus throughout his life, but he has delved into the most subjects involving his work. He also has a lifetime of strange experiences as well. We're going to get into that. Then at the bottom of hour number 3, I will bring you the SOR Newswire, brought to you by Paranoia Magazine. Seriah Azkath, welcome to Spaced Out Radio for the first time. How are you?
I'm doing good.
Good to have you here, my friend. Good to have you here. And you know, for our audience who may not be very familiar with your work, you know, you say you've been studying this stuff for 30 years. What intrigued you about it?
I don't know. I always liked mysteries. So I think that's what drew me in as a kid, like the mysterious. As a kid, I wanted to be an astronomer to study UFOs. I wanted to be an archaeologist to find lost civilizations, and was kind of sad to find out that's not really what they looked at, you know?
So you ended up in radio.
I ended up in radio. Music has always been a really big part of my life, and the radio gig just kind of got handed to me. And so I've done a heavy music show, not just metal, like metal, punk, industrial, that kind of stuff. I've been doing that since like 94. And back in 2012, I decided I wanted to try my hand at a talk show. So I didn't think podcasting or anything like that. I thought radio. So I asked my radio station if I could have an hour to do a talk show on the paranormal, and they said sure. So that's where the Road Go got started.
That is awesome. That is completely awesome. So for you, getting involved in this subject and you know, kind of searching out these mysteries over the last 3 decades, what really pulls you towards it? Is it the UFOs? Is it the strange anomalies? Is it the missing people, the strange cryptids out there?
Honestly, it's a little bit of all of it. I think I've always leaned a little towards UFOs more than anything else. But I think it's all interconnected. Not that I think there's a universal theory of everything, but I think there are connections through all this different stuff. And that there's kind of a web of stuff going on. And it's not, I don't think you can separate out UFOs from cryptids, from psychic manifestations. I think there are points where all this stuff crosses over.
Yeah, and you know what? A lot more people are going to that as well. I mean, for so long there was just, you were either a ghost hunter, or a UFO hunter, or a cryptid hunter. There was no blending in between. And realistically, it's only been about the last 5 years where people have really started to try and blend things together. You being a UFO guy, what excites you about this story that's been going on right now? With everything in the mainstream media.
Not much, really. I don't think much of it. I think a lot of it we're seeing is disinfo, or it's drones, like the one with the big, the one Jerry Corbell put out with the pyramid-shaped things. It's very likely those are just planes. I feel like the government probably has some really amazing footage that they're not sharing with us.
Like what? What do you think they're holding?
I don't know. I don't know what they have, but I'm sure they have, access to far more of this stuff than they're going to show us. I mean, the government's always going to lie. They're always going to play a game, like it's always going to be some level of propaganda, no matter what it is or who's in charge. I mean, it's just what they do. So they're not going to come out and say, "Oh, there's aliens." If they're giving us that impression, and you're not seeing it on like front page news, you're seeing it in smaller little bits. It's not getting like mainstream attention.
Do you think that's changing though? Because the way I'm seeing it, with the way the mainstream is tackling this, I don't think they've asked a lot of hard questions yet.
No.
But I think it's getting there, and I think the coverage that we've been waiting for on this subject, for everybody to take it seriously, has finally, I think we're finally seeing that. And trust me, man, if you listen to my previous shows over the years, you'd know I've been pretty hardcore against what we have been seeing. But I got to admit, I'm getting a little excited about this.
I don't think it's going to amount to anything. I really don't. I didn't think it was going to amount to anything when the To the Stars thing came out. I mean, they made a lot of big promises, and nothing really significant showed up. I'm not seeing a huge change in the people who are not involved in this field. Like, it doesn't seem to be reaching the people who aren't interested in it. Like, I don't get people going, "Oh, I didn't believe in UFOs," but now that I saw it in the New York Times, I see mostly people who are already interested in it being excited that now it's in the New York Times. But I think most people, if they're not interested in this stuff, it's not changing anything. It's not enough to make that change.
Okay.
Now, if the president came out and said something, "Oh, there are UFOs," I mean, sure, there'll be people who are still going to say, "Well, he's lying." But at least that would be something that I think would change a non-paranormal audience over to maybe think about this stuff more seriously.
So do you think it's the attitude of the mainstream media and people, rather than the people who are controlling the UFO narrative right now, or do you think it's vice versa?
I think it's vice versa. I think they're getting exactly what they want out of this narrative, and I don't know what that is. I mean, they're very good at what they do, so I couldn't even guess what the game is for this. I mean, there have been numerous times where they said they're going to reveal stuff, and then nothing happens. And I mean, that's something that's been going on for years. So you always get these things where they're like, "Oh, this project was declassified. Now we're gonna get all the answers," and then nothing comes of it.
So in other words, if I get this correctly, and I've talked to a number of people, such as yourself, you're just tired of the BS. You it's either crap or get off the pot for you. Like, stop with the games.
Yeah, if they come out with something seriously, because the thing is, video is so hard to, or I should say, it's so easy to fake. You know what I mean? Like, anyone can make a convincing video nowadays, and especially the government. On top of that, it doesn't really tell us anything. Okay, so the way I approach this stuff is a lot of people feel like, well, we got to prove that UFOs are real. I don't feel that way. I think that anyone who takes an honest look at any of this stuff will realize this stuff has been happening to us throughout written history and undoubtedly before, whether it be UFOs, cryptids, ghosts. Sometimes it's named different things, as Jacques Vallée showed. The fairy faith and the UFO, the UFO encounters are very, very similar. I don't think there's any way a reasonable person, after looking at all that evidence and all that history, can say that this thing isn't real. It doesn't tell us what it is, though. And for the government to come out and be like, oh, look, UFOs are real. Yeah, well, we know that. I that's not a question to me. That's not the question I want answered. I want to know what this stuff consists of.
Are you looking for little green men or the technology behind it?
I don't even know if it's technology. I mean, maybe of a sort. I think things can appear as technology when they're not. I like the approach that someone like Patrick Harper has, where he talks about an imaginal realm and our realm where we bring things into existence. So we're interacting with this stuff, and by interacting with it, we're bringing it into some sort of existence. A little bit of us and a little bit of them. And it may appear as technology because that's the disguise that it's under right now, because that's what we need to understand it.
Okay. So why do you think the government would make up UFO videos?
Oh, I don't know that they're making up the videos. The videos could be completely legitimate. I'm just saying, like, video evidence isn't necessarily enough to convince anybody. And plus, we don't know what kind of technology they really have. Anything they're showing us, anything they're admitting to having, they probably have at least a decade, if not more, advanced stuff out there that they're not telling us about. So they could video, like what was happening at Area 51, where people were going out and seeing these crafts doing all these crazy maneuvers in the sky. Those were probably drones. And they weren't acknowledging having that technology at the time, but it makes sense considering where drone technology went in the, couple of decades after that.
Do you believe then that the U.S. government or any government on this planet, which has had this sort of issue with these craft that whatever they are, wherever they come from, do you think that there's like a world conglomeration in trying to shut down the truth on what's happening with UFOs?
No, I don't. I think they just don't know. I think that's the truth. I don't think they may have more. They may have much better videos. They may have more data, but I still don't think anyone knows exactly what these things are. And I think that's part of their nature.
So what do you think they are?
I don't know. I think there's something that is meant to drive us forwards, that is meant to make us ask questions, to question our existence, our reality, and stuff like that. That's why I find UFOs so interesting. Bigfoot doesn't necessarily make you question the deeper things in reality, but the UFO phenomenon, when you study it, it does. I think that when people have encounters with these things, these are the modern day equivalent of shamanic awakenings in a lot of cases. But it's not always taken that way because we see it as scary. And we have this cultural belief that these are aliens abducting us for evil experiments rather than, oh, this is an awakening. This is something that you need to deal with in order to kind of like wake up.
Have you ever been abducted?
I've never been abducted that I'm aware of, no.
Would you like to be?
I don't know what abducted really means. I mean, there's the problem is with people like Bud Hopkins and stuff, they were using hypnosis, and hypnosis is not a memory recovery tool. So there's all this literature, there's all this belief that, these are what abductions are, but most of that is based on hypnotically regressed memories, which are not real memories.
Very true. But for the person who's experienced the abduction phenomena, the snippets that they are able to remember are very powerful.
Yes.
So how do you blend the two?
Well, I think you gotta sort of, and the thing is, hypnosis is an altered state. So you could say that the person under hypnosis is right then having an experience. I think a lot of this stuff happens because it alters our consciousness. as far as like people remembering snippets, I mean, that's because something really is happening to them, but they may not be able to process it in a normal level of consciousness.
What if they wake up on the table?
I don't know how many people have woken up on the table that haven't hypnotically remembered that.
I did.
Did you?
I did.
Okay, tell me your story.
Oh, this is fun. This is fun.
Now, do you remember this stuff on your own?
Yes.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah, I've never gone for regression therapy.
Cool.
Yes. So what happened to me was it was September 29th, 2014, and I was woken up in the middle of the night. And when I woke up, I knew I was lying on something metallic, and I looked over to my right and I saw darkness, but I could see light coming from the other side. I turned my head. I looked over to the left. I saw three little gray dudes standing there, and realized that when I woke up, it was because I was feeling the like little children's like fingers running through my hair. And I saw these little gray dudes, and I was like, holy cow. I used a expletive. I've been taken. And from there, I put my head back down into the little donut thing that they had for me, my face, so I could breathe, much like a massage table. And then I felt the one move over to my shoulder. The second one was kind of whisking through my hair. The third one brought the saw. Yeah. And that hurt. That hurt.
What did they saw?
The back of my head.
Okay. Did you have any marks from it afterwards?
I had a bump.
Really?
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah.
Any implants or anything?
I think that's what they were doing, is that they were trying to implant the back of my head. I woke up while they were doing, or I was awake through the entire procedure. And then all of a sudden I had the urge that I had to pee. And I started screaming at them that they had to hurry up, because otherwise I was going to piss all over their table. And no, true story. And all of a sudden they hurried up, and next thing I know, I am lying on top of my blankets with my face buried in my pillow. My head feels like I've just had the worst hangover ever, and I ran to the bathroom and took one of the best pees of my life, man. Honestly, I must have stood there for like anywhere from 3 to 5 minutes. It was fantastic. It was absolutely fantastic. And that's what happened. True story.
No, I have no doubts it's a true story. What was happening in your life at that time period? Were you going through like any elements of change? Were things disruptive in any way?
No, man. I was starting contact, and a few months previous, I had seen my first extraterrestrial in a forest with my friend. And,
really?
And 5 days previous to that, I had seen a landing.
Nice.
Right, about 140, 150 yards in front of me. And when I came outside and I asked where they were, they turned their lights on for me. So I'm one of the rare exceptions to the rule where I'm a journalist, radio journalist by trade, and experiencer as well. And,
right.
And it's something where it's hard to balance the fairness between proper journalism and trying to stay on an even keel compared to those who want to show a bias, because I try not to show the bias of being the experiencer, even though it slips out every now and again.
Well, sure, because the experience was real.
Absolutely.
How did it, like, when you say you were starting contact, was that something you intended to do? Like, were you looking for contact, or did it just happen?
I was, after I figured out the UFO. I had no choice. I worked with a friend of mine. Boy, this interview just flipped. I worked with a friend of mine named Pascal Lachance, who, excuse me, who, when I started having some major experiences, I started working with him, and he's kind of like my guru, and he's like, how far down the rabbit hole do you want to go? And I was like, let's just go the full way. So after about a year and a bit of working with him, he started talking to me about that his guides were telling him to push me more towards ETs and UFOs. And I had seen fire in the sky at that point, and I was like, no, I don't want to be that guy. Don't want to be that guy at all. And in Travis Walton. And so when all of a sudden he said to me, what if you don't have a choice? That's when I knew. Then all of a sudden UFOs started appearing pretty much anytime I wanted. And that lasted through 2015.
Nice.
Yeah. It was kind of weird.
To me, that things like that show that there's a consciousness element there. You know, this is a spiritual journey as much as anything else. You know, you waking up on the table doesn't change that. You still may have been in an altered state of consciousness, even a slightly different reality when that happened.
Could be.
Also, with shamanic awakenings, if you look at like what native cultures, when they talk about shamanism and stuff, a lot of times they're implanted when they're on these vision quests, when they're on these initial journeys that are so brutal to them, where they're literally describe having their bodies taken apart.
That's all part of the journey, man. That's all.
Right.
That's all part of the journey in what we're trying to figure out. You know, I mean, it's just like there's people out there who claim that, you know, when they went up there, they had a bad knee, and the next thing they know, they go to the doctors and their knee is fixed, or their arm, or they don't have cancer anymore. It does happen.
It does happen. It also happens in near-death experiences. Any of these experiences that set us off on that slightly different reality, on that different level of consciousness, seem to be able to affect us in very strong ways. I don't think reality is what we think it is. I think that's the first problem with approaching any of this stuff.
Okay, so take me down that road. We got about 2.5 minutes to go before we go to break at the bottom of the hour.
I don't know where that road goes. I think we don't fully understand this. It could, I think the things like the holographic theory or simulation theory are probably closer to what we're actually experiencing. But I think our consciousness, I think we are in a consciousness first model. I think that consciousness influences everything. It may not be the consciousness we are normally dealing with, this ego-based consciousness that we affect the world with. It's sort of a deeper level of consciousness that gives us what we need at different points. I just talked to PMH Atwater recently, and I asked her why she's been researching near-death experiences for most of her life. And I asked her why only some people have near-death experiences, and her response was, they're the ones who needed it. And I think that's exactly it. I mean, I think a lot of this stuff is to correct our spiritual paths.
Yes, and PMH Atwater, she's a brilliant lady too. We've had her on the show before as well, a couple of years ago. I mean, she's a real gem in this field. And with the consciousness study, I mean, you look at the way people are looking into these UFOs. I mean, talking about flying craft with their minds, being able to go wherever they wanted, whether it's deep in space or anywhere around the world or deep into the ocean. We see it all the time.
We've also had quite a lot of people say that when they see UFOs, even though they look like craft, they feel like they're interacting with a living creature.
Doesn't that remind you of the old Disney movie, Flight of the Navigator?
I don't know if I probably saw it at some point, but I don't know.
Oh, dude, you got to go back. I recommend anybody who is into UFOs to watch that Disney movie.
Is that the one where the kid finds the UFO and climbs into it?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I saw that. I rewatched that a few years ago. Still don't remember it. I know I enjoyed it, though.
Well, you know what? I think that movie, for its time, and knowing now and rewatching it as an adult, I remember watching it last year, and I was kind of like, oh, wow. Like, this is just way too real.
So did what changes did you find in your life after having those experiences?
The good or the bad?
Both.
Well, I'll tell you after the break. How about that?
Sounds good.
Yeah. Let's go to break here at the bottom of the hour on Spaced Out Radio. And we are talking tonight with Seriah Azkath. We're going all over the place. 30 years of the world's unknown is what we are trying to understand. And we'll get to more with Seriah coming up right after this on Spaced Out Radio. Stay tuned. All right, buddy, we're clear.
Okay. So you said about 5 minutes?
Yeah, we got 5 minutes.
All right.
Yes, Kira, that's my voice that keeps echoing. It's because when I get too close to my microphone like that, because sometimes when I talk, I move, it echoes through his headphones. That's what's causing it. Hi, Gary, you're Dutch.
I can turn that down.
Yeah. Gary Vermeer, you're Dutch. Just saying. Don't know if you wanted to know that or not, but you are Dutch. It's my friend. Hi, SJ. How you doing, man?
I turned the speakers down, so hopefully you won't echo anymore.
Oh, that's okay. I moved my mic away, too. I'm still getting good levels on this side, so that's all right. So what's your music du jour right now?
Yeah, God, there's so much stuff I like. It's ridiculous. For my music show, I literally get about 200 albums a week.
Mm-hmm.
And I obviously can't spend lots of time with all of them. So I go through and usually find a couple of things a week that I'm like, oh, this is great. You know, I can't even remember what half of it is. I have to mark it so I can go back and check it later. I tend to like a lot of atmospheric black metal. I like droney stuff. I like stuff that's really original. So if I hear a band that doesn't sound like anything I've heard before, that's where I go, ooh, what's this?
Right now, I'm on really, really dirty Texas rock and roll.
Okay.
That's my kick right now. So my kick right now would be the Texas Hippie Coalition.
Ah, okay. Never got into them.
I've just really been getting into them probably the last month and a half.
Like, I tend to like really complex stuff, too. I'm trying to see what I've played recently that I really liked. Again, though, a lot of times I don't like remember stuff by name. I literally have to mark it because there's so much stuff. Nope, that's not a playlist. I do really like Zeal and Ardor. That was one I found a few years ago because they combined sort of like the old slave hymnals with black and electronica. And it was like nothing I'd ever heard before. And I was just blown away right from the start.
That'd be kind of cool to listen to. What are they called?
Zeal and Ardor.
Veal as in the meat?
Zeal as in Zed.
Oh, zeal.
Yeah.
And you said Zed. Right on. You got some Canadian in you.
Well, I know that's the Canadian way of pronouncing it. And it just made things simpler.
Are they much like Ghost?
No, they're nothing like Ghost.
I'm a big fan of Ghost, too.
Ah, okay. Again, another band I didn't really get into. A lot of people I know love them. I think part of it is people kept telling me Ghosts sound like Merciful Fate. Merciful Fate are one of my all-time favorite bands. And then I listened to them and I said, no, they more sound like Blue Oyster Cult.
Sorry, I'm just trying to keep up with my chat room and everything here, too. So
That's fine. There's sort of a goth metal band called Arsenic Addiction that I really liked recently.
Geez, my son would love your music collection.
Dead Shape Figure. I know nothing about this band. I played it last week and I listened back to the show. I went, what am I playing right now? This is awesome. So yeah, Dead Shape Figure stood out to me.
My son, who is 7 years old, he is just a metalhead. He can't tell you any bands, but every time we're driving around and I have my satellite radio on, he's on liquid metal. Dad, turn to the liquid metal. He loves it, like the Lamb of God type stuff.
Right.
He just thinks it's fantastic, unless it's Ron Bumblefoot Thal, because that's his hero.
Mm. There's a band called Dune who spell their name with a V instead of a U. That's really phenomenal.
Hold on right there, because we're going to get going in 20 seconds. Big thanks to Dave Wadge and Andrew for the amazing super chats. It's a great way to understand and support this show, and big thank you for that love and admiration there, and everyone who subscribed. Here we go. Second half hour of Spaced Out Radio is now underway. My name is Dave Scott. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us. We really do appreciate earning your listening ears. We want to remind you that if you missed portions of this show or others, check out our free archives by going to youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Just do me the favor, hit that subscribe button. Our website is spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you, including rocking out to Bumblefoot and reading up on Captain Shirk's SOR Newswire. Follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and on Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show. We continue on talking all things mysterious around the world. Seriah Azkath is with us. Appreciate you coming on. Seriah, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. What was I supposed to ask you or answer for you when we got back from the break?
What were the after effects of your UFO experience?
That's right. On a personal level, made me anxious. Made me yearn for more, even though I didn't know what was going on. I lost, on a personal level, pretty much all my friends.
Really? Why?
Yeah. Because they don't want to be around. Right? The majority of people aren't ready for it.
Fair enough.
Because when you have a bunch of experiences, you get somebody who's a multiple experiencer with everything. What really happens is it consumes the person who it happened to, right?
Sure.
So I mean, when you get that consumption happening, people don't want to be around because all of a sudden watching the hockey game or what's happening politically really doesn't matter.
Right. That makes sense. What else?
You get frustrated because you don't know when it's going to happen. You don't know how it happens. You don't know. You look for every little sign because you want it to continue to happen so you can try and figure it out.
Yeah.
Right? That's probably the biggest one for any experiencer out there is they go on this amazing truth in trying to figure out what happened to them. It's not about what happened to the government. Like even with all this stuff that's going on right now, I could care less what the government knows. I want to know what happened to me. I know other experiencers want to know what happened to them. So, I mean, that's kind of the reasoning behind it. It drives you nuts because it screws with your life. I mean, there's people out there, as you know, they have literally lost their jobs, lost family, lost their friends, lost their homes, all because of this interaction with extraterrestrials.
Yes.
And they can't handle it. They can't handle it because you're looking in every book, you're watching every documentary, you're watching every television show, you're looking up anything online. Like when I saw a black triangle, the first thing I did was I went online. Wanted to know. Wanted to see if anybody had seen the one that I had seen. And guess what? Nobody did. Everybody sees the one with the lights on each corner. Mine was lit up right underneath. Right?
Well, the other thing is these experiences are very personal. Like, I don't think we're going to get answers to these questions from the government, because this is a very personal journey when these things happen to people.
Absolutely. And I'm sure over the years you've talked to enough of them to understand that.
Right, exactly. That's why I say, like, the releases from the government, I don't really care. If people think UFOs are not real, I don't care. I know this stuff is real. I don't know what it is, but I know all these weird phenomena have a reality to them because, again, we've been experiencing them as long as there have been people on the planet. So either most people, over the course of history have been hallucinating the same thing, or there's a reality behind this that we don't understand. And I'm pretty sure it's the second one.
So when you go down that path and you're trying to figure out, where you should be studying, what have you learned?
Oh God. See, the way I came into this differently than a lot of people did. Like, I was interested in the paranormal stuff, but then I got really into the occult stuff. And it was at some point having these weird experiences that seemed to be connected to the occult stuff I was doing. And then reading, I think, Transformation from Strieber when it came out and going, wait a minute, a lot of these experiences are really similar to mine, but mine don't have that UFO sort of vibe to them. Like, they're couched differently, but they're kind of the same experiences. And that was the point where I said, what if this stuff isn't aliens? Like, it took a while for that to really click in place, but that was kind of the fruition of it, that it wasn't maybe what it seemed like, and that it appeared as different things to different people, depending on how we choose to kind of perceive that, like unconsciously choose to perceive it. We don't do that on a conscious level, I don't think. So when I started studying this, I started looking at all this stuff. I try to throw out the assumptions. So when I look at a UFO thing, I say, okay, let's throw out the UFO idea. Like, one of the examples I use is that if someone sees a light in a house, and light phenomena go through all this stuff. If someone sees a light in a house, they're like, oh, look, it's a ghost. But if you see a light in the sky, it's an alien. If you see a light in the woods, it's a fairy or it's a will-o-wisp or whatever. But what we really have is a light. We have an unexplained light, an anomalous light that we can't explain. One of the things I find that go through all of this stuff is poltergeist activity. Have you experienced poltergeist activity after your encounters?
No, I have not. That's where I am a little jealous of people.
But a good portion of people who have near-death experiences, UFO encounters, even cryptid encounters, will also have poltergeist activity for a while afterwards, sometimes for life, depending on how severe the encounter is. It's actually unusual that you haven't had poltergeist activity. Electrosensitivity is another one where people knock out electronics and such. So there's no good reason why these things should be connected. I mean, Kenneth Ring did a great study with the Omega Project, where he studied the after effects of near-death experiences and people who had, abduction experiences, and found that the after effects are almost exactly the same. And that book, I think, really put me on that path of, okay, that doesn't make any sense. If one is death and one is an alien encounter, how does that make any sense? And the answer is get rid of the assumptions of what we're dealing with and look at it for what it is, without those labels and stuff attached to it.
The poltergeist activity that kind of goes along with it, I want to ask you about that because I've never experienced that. I know people who have. Do you feel that there is a connectivity issue between the human and the paranormal world that is kind of sparking these instances?
Yeah, I suspect that most poltergeist activity at least originates with us. We have shown in labs, we have plenty of evidence in scientific labs that psi is something that exists, that telekinesis actually works, and that's with intent. It's with intent, but being in the lab, it doesn't mean anything. And as Jeffrey Kripal once said, the paranormal is something that happens to you for a reason in your life. So when you're trying to study in the lab, it's very hard. You're only going to get micro effects. I think when people have these experiences, it kind of unlocks that PK energy, and we have no control over it in most cases. So it manifests when people get upset, when they get emotional, then they get poltergeist experiences. and it's coming from somewhere within us, or it's something using that energy. It's hard to tell, where things start and stop, honestly, between us and the other. And that's kind of like poltergeists are one of the big things for me. I know you're friends with Timothy Renner.
Yes.
And I didn't realize it until he told me, but like he was a flesh and blood guy when I met him. And I asked him one day, what turned you from that? And he said it was me pointing out all the poltergeist activity that surrounds Bigfoot encounters. A lot of times people go into the woods looking for Bigfoot, and what they get are poltergeist effects, and that's it. And I'm like, and Joshua Cutchin took that and ran and named it the wilderness poltergeist. And that's kind of the thing. Like, where do we end and the other start? And I don't know there's a good answer for that. There's tons of examples of that, though. Like, I think the poltergeist activity, at least the energy for it, starts with us. Now, whether we project something out there like a tulpa, whether it's our unconscious, or whether it's another entity out there using it, or a variation of all three, I think when you initially have those experiences, when you have that near-death experience, that abduction experience, even sometimes a cryptid encounter, it's waking something up in you. And when that wakes up, that's when you start seeing things like poltergeist activity. There may also be certain areas on the planet, places like Skinwalker Ranch, for example, or Sedona, where that naturally energizes us. Robert Schoch, who's more famous for the dating of the Sphinx, showed that in laboratory tests over the last 100 years or so, people would score higher in psi tests when there was higher solar activity, which then also implies we're somehow connected to the sun in ways we don't understand. That radiation coming from the sun actually amps up our psychic abilities. So when I say there's a net, that's what I'm talking about. There's like this web of all these different things, and I don't think there's one simple answer to it, or one answer for everything. I think there's a lot of different things that can look similar yet be different.
I would agree with that. So do you think then poltergeist activity, as we kind of switch gears here, is more concentrated towards somebody from inside of us, some spiritual connection with inside of us that is causing or manifesting, poltergeist activity?
Yeah. I think with some cases, they've shown parapsychology will tell you that in most poltergeist cases, it's usually a prepubescent girl that is the focus of the activity. And it's kind of an outlet for them. Like, they don't know they're doing it, but that's how the thing is expressing itself. They're frustrated. They're usually in stressful situations, and suddenly poltergeist activity starts. And of course, that doesn't happen for everyone. So what's the difference between someone who just acts out, or someone who holds it inside and is miserable, and someone who manifests poltergeist activity? I don't know what makes that different. Like, why someone will manifest it and someone won't. It could be genetic. It could be any number of things, because we don't understand where this stuff comes from.
Where do you think it comes from?
I really don't know. I think we're electrical in nature. I think that's part of it. I've been dealing with Kundalini experiences since I was like 13, and that stuff is very, very electrical. And I think that's a part of it. I think maybe an amping up of our electrical, of whatever we are, it has some connection to electrical energy.
How does that affect the soul or the consciousness?
Well, that might be what it is. Like, it's connected through that.
Okay.
Again, when we say consciousness, like, we still don't quite know what we're talking about. We could say it's self-awareness, but there's a lot more to consciousness than self-awareness. When you say soul, that's even harder to define. Is that the infinite us? Or is that like the spiritual us? Or, they're terms that we throw around a lot, but it's very hard to define them because we don't really understand what's there. What we perceive in our let's say, conscious mind and our normal ego-driven conscious mind is a tiny fraction of what we're experiencing at any time being filtered down through the brain. The brain gets rid of all the stuff it doesn't think it's that's important. We never even notice it in most cases. Beyond that, we have all these unconscious impulses, what Colin Wilson liked to call the robot, and the robot was, when you're driving the car, you're not thinking about every little thing you're doing. You just drive. Even, sometimes you drive and get somewhere and be like, I don't remember driving home. All right, great. And that's the robot. It's still a conscious part of you, but it's not the top consciousness, that tip of the iceberg that, we're fully aware of to some degree. And there's all this stuff under the surface that's also sort of consciousness. That's also us that we can't even imagine what's there. I mean, that can go out anywhere from a higher self to the soul to any number of different definitions, and can even potentially appear as things outside of us because it's so different from what we normally experience in everyday life.
Do you have an example firsthand of this happening?
Which part?
The entire aspect from poltergeist activity to the firing up of the consciousness or soul level.
Yeah, I don't know how to give an example of that. I mean, when I've had poltergeist activity, I tend to treat it as if it's an other, even though I'm fairly sure it's coming from me, because it's not conscious me, if that makes sense. So like, even if it is me, I'm not consciously controlling it. So it's kind of like, okay, stop throwing things around. Stop doing this. I got it. You're here, or whatever it is, whether it be stress or whatever. The firing up thing. I mean, my personal experiences with Kundalini are a big part of that, because that's when all my weird experiences started, is when that woke up, even though I didn't know it was Kundalini. I had never even heard the term or had any concept of that stuff. And again, when people have these weird experiences, the after effect is oftentimes poltergeist activity and psychic abilities and, premonitions and stuff like that. So I think there's an igniting of that sort of energy.
The Kundalini is a part of this whole genre that we haven't on this show spent a lot of time discussing it. So for people, who are unfamiliar with it or have heard about it but not had the time to look into it, explain what the Kundalini factor is.
So Kundalini is I believe it's a Hindi word that basically means coiled serpent. And it is believed to be an energy that exists in everybody, that is at the base of your spine. And it just inside the tailbone. And when it wakes up, usually through Kundalini yoga with intention, it rises through the chakras in your back until it hits the crown chakra, which is just above the top of your head. And at that point, you get sort of a connection to like godhood and such. So the idea of raising Kundalini is for enlightenment. It's to connect to the universe better, to connect to God, or whatever you want to call it. If Kundalini is rising and drop, it kind of goes up one side of the spine and down the other, and it can have health benefits and stuff like this. In a case like mine, it just woke up. I had no control over it, no way to guide it because I didn't know it was a thing. And I had pain along different chakras and stuff, and I didn't even know chakras were a thing until much, much later when I came across a book on Kundalini accidentally, I think in Fate magazine, and was like, wait a minute, this is everything I've been experiencing for years. It is considered an evolutionary force in man. It can be a very sexual energy. It's very electrical. And it literally exists in everyone. It's just in most people, it is dormant unless you do something to wake it up. But I've encountered quite a lot of people who have awakened Kundalini and had no idea what it is, just like I didn't. And after doing a couple of shows on it, I've had so many listeners contact me and go, oh my God, you've just described everything I've been experiencing. It kind of just does what it wants, honestly. And I feel like it's probably saved my life in a number of occasions. situations where I should have been seriously hurt where it just wasn't. It's, I don't know. It's a weird ass thing.
How did you know when you awakened yours?
Well, I started having hallucinations. And I knew they were hallucinations. They weren't things that could be real. Like I thought I was losing my mind. Honestly, I was like 12 or 13. And I played trombone at the time, and I would see smoke coming out of the end of the trombone. And I knew there wasn't smoke coming out of the trombone, but I was looking right at it. And so it started off mostly with things like that, audio hallucinations, hearing things rattle, bells, things like that. And then eventually it transferred into pain, where I'd feel like someone was stabbing my tailbone with like a flaming knife and just kind of twisting it. And slowly I had more and more experiences, and other weird things would happen to me. And it wasn't, like I said, when I found the ad in Fate magazine, it was kind of like listing, oh, this kind of stuff happens when your Kundalini's awakening. I'm going, I think I have all of that but one. And it was just like, I apparently need this book. And I also went to the library and took out every book I could find on Kundalini, which a lot of them were from ancient, Hindu sources of people, like traditionally raising Kundalini as well. There was a great one from John White, I think, called Kundalini and Evolution or something like that. And it's a compilation from all kinds of different writers. So you get a lot of different viewpoints. And that helped me kind of understand a little more of what I was dealing with. I had someone contact me a couple of years ago, and she said that, like me, she didn't believe in any of this energy stuff when hers woke up. And she's like, it kind of just does what it wants. Even if I don't believe in it, it's still there. It's still affecting chakras, which I didn't think were real. It's hard to describe, but it's also transferable. And that makes it very, very interesting. Like if you're having a massive Kundalini experience, you can actually transfer that energy to somebody else.
How do you transfer it to someone else? So we have about 2.5 minutes to go.
Just by touching them. There are one of the examples I give that people can actually see. If you look on YouTube for laughing churches, one of the things Kundalini can do is make you laugh. It's a very weird sort of laughter. It's not like, oh, something's funny and I'm laughing. You're just laughing. It can be a little scary, actually, when it first happens. And there are churches where these people, these preachers, are obviously generating Kundalini. They think it's the Holy Spirit. I mean, it's just a different name for the same energy. So it's just a preference of name. But they will grab one of their parishioners and that person will start laughing. And then they'll grab the person next to them and they'll start laughing. And again, I think because it's electrical, it kind of just transfers like that. But you'll have these whole congregations of people just laughing. And it looks ridiculous. It looks insane, but that's exactly what Kundalini does. And I've done that to people where I'll start laughing and they'll be like, why are you laughing? And I'll grab their arm and then they'll start laughing. It scares the hell out of them because they can't control it. It's not like they're laughing because I'm laughing. They're not laughing because something's funny. It's just this almost automatic response.
Do you know when it's happening?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Now I definitely know when it's happening. I mean, before it was kind of a little sketchy, but now it's like, oh, okay, that happened.
Okay, would the average person know if it's happening to them?
Probably not. I think a lot of people would have the same response that I did, where you think there's something wrong with you. I went to all kinds of doctors. I went to psychologists. There was never anything wrong with me.
Not the first time I've heard that on this show. That's for sure. If we don't know how it's happening or why it's happening, how do we know that we can get the full experience? As we got about 30 seconds.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I mean, it's why I found doing shows on Kundalini every once in a while is really important to me, because hopefully somebody who listens will need that information. And then it's generally pretty helpful. I mean, because the thing is, it can mimic other stuff. It can mimic schizophrenia. It can mimic epilepsy. And, I've had people tell me, they thought they were epileptic, but they weren't. And, now that they've understood that Kundalini is a thing, suddenly they're like, oh, this might have been what I was experiencing, and it fits, all these other things that I was experiencing as well.
Well,
But it gets
on that note, I'm going to get you to hold on right there, okay,
absolutely.
because we are going to go to break here at the top of the hour. And, man, we're in for an interesting show. We're going to continue with this Kundalini talk when we come back with our guest, Seriah Azkath. Let's figure out what it is. I don't know about you, but for many of us out there, we're scratching our heads. Do we have the Kundalini? Can we pass it to others? Does it work? Does it not? How do we know when it's happening? We'll find out more on Spaced Out Radio next. All right, my friend, I'll be right back, okay?
All right.
Okay. All right, brother, I am back.
All right.
We've got about a minute and a half, 2 minutes.
Okay.
Hey, Brian Smith. 416 Bitcoin. You have to let me know how to do that. Hey, Mary Bone. She's a vegetarian. Mary Bone, Mary Bone, Mary Bone. Hey, Dirty Filth. How are you? You having a good time so far?
Yeah, definitely.
Rock and roll, man. All right, we got 1 minute here.
Okay.
All right. Let's see here. Hello, Spookles the Awesome Cat. How are you? A big thank you to Yogi, Andrew, and Dave for the super chats tonight. It really helps us out with what we do. Thank you to everybody who's given a thumbs up here. Here we go with hour number 2.
You're listening to Spaced Out Radio with Dave Scott. Follow Dave on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and on Facebook, Spaced Out Radio Show.
Hour number 2 of Spaced Out Radio is now underway. Thank you so much for joining us. We really do appreciate earning your listening ears wherever you are on this beautiful planet we call Earth. We want to say hello to everyone listening in on our terrestrial affiliates around North America, digitally on TalkStream Live, Revolution Radio, and KPNL. All of our archives are free by going to youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Just do old Davey the favor, hit that subscribe button. The Desert Clam has set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club. Jaspidius. Jaspidius is your password. Use it wisely, space travelers, as the Clam sets a password each and every night right here on Spaced Out Radio. Our website is spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you, including rocking out to Bumblefoot and reading up on Captain Shirk's SOR Newswire. Follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and on Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show. We continue on tonight with Seriah Azkath. We're talking Kundalini right now. What's it all about? How do we know we have it? Do we need some Kundalini in our lives? Seriah, welcome back, man.
Hey. Glad to be here.
All right. Do we need this Kundalini in our life?
No, I don't think everyone does, no. I mean, like I said, it is anyone can do Kundalini yoga and wake it up. It's something that exists in absolutely everyone. It just doesn't wake up on its own in everyone. And I don't know why it wakes up on some people and not others. When I mentioned earlier Kenneth Ring's Omega Project, one of the correlations he found is that people who have near-death experiences and people who have abduction encounters often find themselves with a spontaneous Kundalini awakening afterwards.
I'm curious with how it works with people who have cryptid encounters like Bigfoot or Dogman.
Yeah, I don't know how common it is with those. I've never looked into that aspect of it.
Okay, but you did mention that it does come around with cryptid experiences.
I said that there are poltergeist activity often around.
Sorry, yes. I apologize. I got the two confused there. Okay.
And poltergeist, and actually having active Kundalini generally means you're also going to have poltergeist experiences.
Wow. I'm just trying to figure out how it's all tied together.
Well, that's kind of what I've been trying to do, is figure out it. And what I get is there's a web. There's a lot of different things, like I said, that can mimic similar phenomena or even give you the same phenomena, but with different factors.
Okay, help me out with that.
So, as I was saying earlier, like location matters. So somebody who is not susceptible to having strange experiences or anything might have strange experiences if they're in the right place, certain locations, like, again, somewhere like Sedona, Skinwalker Ranch, where it seems like they're more energetic areas. I also think when people go out into the woods, when they're out in the actual wilderness, it ups that sort of energy in us. I think that energy is dulled down when you're around a lot of different electromagnetic fields and around a ton of people. And when you're out in the wilderness, you're connecting to something that you don't normally connect to. And I think that's why we get so many strange experiences in the woods, because it's unlocking that energy in us, that stuff isn't being blocked up anymore. So that's one aspect of it, that we're looking at location. And then you have people who have had weird experiences that seem to have connected them to something. Emotion plays a very large part in it. People who have poltergeist activity, people who have active kundalini, they'll tell you every time that it's when they get emotional that the stuff really starts going off.
Okay.
Shirley Black, who is one of my occasional co-hosts, had 3 near-death experiences, awakened kundalini, has done tons of laboratory psi experiments, is just an absolutely can do some really remarkable stuff. And when she was telling me about the second near-death experience on the air, we were pre-recording, and she suddenly just had to go. And I was like, man, I hope I didn't upset her. And she came back. She goes, I was starting to get emotional, and all the LEDs around my computer started going off. So she's like, so I knew I was about to blow something out. She's like, I just needed to get away from the computer for a few minutes.
Weird. Very weird. Huh.
I had a girlfriend who had very, very unbalanced and awakened kundalini. And anytime we got into a fight, like we got into a fight one day in the car just died. And she just stopped and went, I'm sorry.
So, do you think it has to tie into karma?
No, I don't think so.
Because, I mean, the way you were just explaining it sounds like it almost would.
How so?
Well, just like with the car dying.
Well, it's electrical. It affects electronics. And she was especially electrical with that stuff. I mean, she would fry computers at work, and if she got stressed out, the emotional level, and if her emotions went up, she would fry electronics around her. And the car just quit. It just died. And it went to my mechanic. He had it for 3 days, couldn't get it to go, and then suddenly it just started up again.
All right. Itzy Zaza is asking, can it be awakened and then go dormant?
I don't think it ever goes completely dormant. In my experience, it's, sometimes it's stronger than others. You can certainly repress it. For instance, sometimes I can't sleep because of it. Like my whole body will start pulsating. I've had girlfriends tell me that I literally pulsate in my sleep. So what I found is that a very small dose of Xanax usually calms my system down so I can sleep, but it doesn't mean I still won't wake up. I've woken up before feeling like my body was doing blast beats. And I think the first time it happened, it scared me because I thought it was my heart. And then I'm like, nope, my heart beats normal. Okay, this is Kundalini energy. Wonderful. But other times it's very quiet. So it can sort of go dormant, but I think it's sort of like once you open that door, it never completely shuts again.
Okay.
Now, weirdly, when I had COVID a year ago, my Kundalini really seemed to not be very active at all. And I got vaccinated. And after each vaccination, I didn't have any Kundalini feeling the energy at all for like a week afterwards.
How does the Kundalini tie into the chakras?
So the Kundalini rises through the chakra system in your back. And usually what's happening is it gets to a chakra, and if there's unresolved stuff there that you need to work on, it will hurt. It literally tries to burn itself through those chakras. So what I find, like, I can work with people on this stuff, and I'll move the Kundalini up, and as I hit those chakras and it kind of gets stuck, I'll say to the person, what's popping into your head? And usually by doing that, I can kind of guide them through dealing with whatever it is they need to deal with. Or sometimes the stuff pops into my head, which is even stranger when it happens.
Sovereign has a question for you. Yeah. He's asking, how do you differentiate Kundalini energy from a UFO tractor beam?
I don't know what a UFO tractor beam would feel like.
Or getting beamed by a UFO or buzzed by a UFO.
I don't know how to make that comparison. Yeah, I wouldn't think it would be similar at all, but never having been in a UFO tractor beam, I can't say.
Oh, come on. You got some aliens somewhere hiding on you.
Oh, I've seen UFOs and I've encountered all kinds of things, but I've never encountered things like grays, for example. And when it comes to grays too, I mean, you look at people who do ayahuasca and stuff, and they encounter grays. When you look at old cave paintings, what a lot of ancient astronaut theories will be like, well, look, they have pictures of grays, but those cave paintings are made by the shamans of that culture, who are probably doing hallucinogens, doing things that are putting them in that altered state where they're encountering these gray entities, which is another reason I suspect that this stuff is connected between shamanism and between, like, having those experiences and altered states of consciousness. And by altered states, I don't mean hallucinatory. I mean, they're very real. They're just not our normal conscious state.
Tristan wants to know, what are the symptoms of Kundalini energy rising?
There's a lot of them. It could be anything from shaking, extreme heat. Like for me, I get very, very hot, almost to the point of feeling like I'm going to burst into flames sometimes. I've known people also who get very, very cold, like they're absolutely ice cold when it sets off. Pain is not uncommon. Audio and visual hallucinations are not uncommon. It can kill your sex drive, or it can supercharge it. It can give you excessive strength. It's one of the things I've always had. Like, I've just been way stronger than I have any reason to be. It can give you weird dreams. It can give you all kinds of sleep issues. The pulsating is another one. Yeah, the list goes on and on as far as that stuff goes. It so many different things it can cause. There's not like a 5-symptom list.
I have to laugh here because Susan in our chat room said, that's menopause.
Yeah, I know.
Oh my goodness, that's just awesome.
But not when you're 13, it's not.
Is there an age category where the Kundalini can fire up? Like
No.
you just said at 13, do most people get it as adults or teenage years?
So there's not a lot of work that's been done on spontaneous awakenings. From the people I've dealt with, it can come at any point. Some people have lived with it generally from like when they were a kid. Other people, it wakes up spontaneously in their 20s, in their 30s. Sometimes after an extreme experience, whether it be paranormal or not. It seems to just wake up when it needs to wake up. And a lot more people have awakened Kundalini than they realize. It's just that in Western culture, we don't really have a paradigm that it fits in.
Okay, so what's the difference between awakening your Kundalini and opening up your consciousness?
Well, I think awakening your Kundalini will open up your consciousness. But I don't think you need Kundalini to open up your consciousness. There are other methods that will do that as well.
Like?
Well, like stuff like ayahuasca and having weird experiences will sometimes do that as well. Meditation will do that. And I'm sure I'm forgetting about 50 other different methods that will produce some level of enlightenment. It's just one path of many.
Does it also open up the path to spiritual communication?
Yes. Yeah, because after once it woke up in me, I started having all kinds of experiences with entities. I mean, even my name was given to me right around the time of a massive Kundalini awakening.
Interesting.
And that the name Seriah was literally spoken into my head.
All right. A few questions coming from the audience here.
Sure.
And Dave is asking, could you talk about blowing out the electricity in the city block when you were at work?
It wasn't when I was at work. It was at someone. Yeah, this was something I didn't acknowledge as real for a while. I was super electrical that weekend. Everything I touched, doesn't matter what it was made of, I was getting shocks off of. I went to a friend of mine who was doing a radio show, and this was a type of person who always wanted to shake your hand. And he walks up to me to shake my hand. I'm like, no, don't touch me. I'm like, seriously, you'll get a huge shock. Just don't touch me. And so he gave me kind of a weird look and just accepted it. And at some point, he just barely touched me as he walked by me, and it went off like a gunshot, and it knocked him across the room. And I just turned, it didn't even really affect me. And I turned around and looked at him, and he's like, what the hell was that? And I said, I told you not to touch me. I had no control over it. I've never had anything like that since before or since. But I walked into the hallway after he got done on the radio, and it was a college station he was at. We walk into the hallway, and all the lights went out in the hallway. And I was like, cool, that was probably me. The next day, I went to see a friend of mine who worked at a different radio station. And I walked in, and I'm pretty infamous with my musical friends for the fact that I absolutely hate Metallica. And I walked in, and I said, hey, you get anything new? And he goes, ooh, I got Binge and Purge from Metallica. And as he said that, I grabbed a hold of the rack that all the CDs, the CD players and stuff were in. And I said, well, too bad Metallica suck. And I grabbed the rack, and I got this jolt from the rack, and all the power went out.
That's for insulting Metallica.
That's what I said. I said, okay, maybe they don't suck. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. And we were kind of joking around about it. We went outside, and the entire block was down. And it was like, and I'm going to myself, I could not have done that. I could not have just knocked the entire power on an entire block out.
For whom the bell tolls, my friend.
What the creepy thing was that at some point we're sitting there waiting for the power to come back on, and a phone starts ringing. And it's like, there's no phone, like none of the visible phones are ringing. We had to dig through someone's office, and there was a phone hidden under a desk ringing. And we're like, this is just weird. And he picks it up, and there's just static. And we're like, okay, time to go. But he was the news guy there, and I said, find out for me why the power went out. And he's like, okay. So he calls me the next day. He said, so something blew the transformer for that block or whatever. He said, they don't know what caused it, but they said the surge came from down our section of the road.
It's because you hate Metallica.
I hate Metallica so much. And after that, the electrical stuff stopped, being to that extreme. So I don't know if I just discharged through it or what, but I've never had it like that before or after. It was just like a 2 to 3 day period where it was just causing all kinds of electrical mayhem.
Okay, I just got to know here. Why do you hate Metallica, man?
God. So A, I think they're severely overrated. B, I think they are one of the few bands I really will say they sold out. Because they were this band who was like, we're never going to do a video. We're never going to dress up and wear makeup and all this other stuff. And the minute they made a few bucks, they were willing to do whatever it took to make as much money as possible. They're kind of not nice people. They took my favorite bass player, Jason Newsted, out of my favorite band, Flotsam and Jetsam, and then wasted him. There was an episode of Much Music where they had them on after Load came out, where they were making fun of the guy who was there, who was in the biggest Metallica tribute band in Canada at the time. They were making fun of him for looking like they did, back in their heyday of being a thrash band. They kicked off the suing your fans for downloading music. And honestly, I don't think they've done anything really great since Master of Puppets.
I'll be honest with you. Their 3D movie was terrible. It was. I was in that. I'm not going to lie. I was in that when they were in Vancouver.
And there's so many bands that are so much better than Metallica. Even Bay Area bands, Death Angel, Violence, Forbidden, all those guys I think were 10 times better than Metallica. Testament.
All right, let's move on here. Tristan wants to know about hallucinations when going through a Kundalini experience.
Well, like I said, I would have things like I would see steam, smoke coming out of the horn on the trombone I was playing, and I'd watch it. I'm like 12 years old, and I call my mom in, and I'm going, sit here for a minute while I play. I'm seeing smoke come out of the end, and she's like, what do you mean you're seeing smoke? I'm like, just sit there for a minute. And she would be there, and nothing would happen. She'd leave the room, and I'd start seeing smoke again. And I'm like, am I losing my mind? Like, I know there's not smoke there. I would be sitting there also as a kid, one of the early ones is I'd hear something rattling, almost like recycling was rattling outside my window. And I, again, would call my mom in, can you stop the recycling from rattling? It's keeping me awake, because it was so constant, like something was going through the recycling and making a lot of noise. And one time she came in and she said, there is no recycling out there. And I was like, well, what the hell's what am I hearing? And they couldn't hear it. Again, I thought I was losing my mind. I ended up going to a psychiatrist, and the psychiatrist was like, no, you're fine. I had brain scans done. I had all kinds of stuff done and had no physical problems whatsoever. Nowadays, when something happens, it'll kind of be like I was laying in bed and I felt it pulsing, and I can't remember everything that happened. I can't find the note I wrote it on, but I think I heard a bell ring and then a boom. And I went, okay, that's in my head. And then I just felt this vibration go through me. And then it kind of like the energy kind of calmed down. And I went, I don't know what that was, but that was kind of freaky and interesting. But obviously all hallucinatory. If anyone was there, they wouldn't have heard that boom, the bell, or any of that stuff.
All right, let's move on. Lone Wanderer is asking, what is your view on astral projection then?
I think astral projection is very possible. I think it's us. I think there's different. So I think reality is made of information. And I think when we astrally project, sometimes we may physically be leaving our bodies. Sometimes we're just picking up information and translating it that way. I think a lot of what we experience in reality is just our brain translating information in different ways.
Okay. So how can a drug like ayahuasca help enlighten the experience?
I mean, as for why, I don't know. But it's definitely not something people should do just for the hell of it. It's a very, very unpleasant thing to do from what I've told. I've never tried it. But I do know people who have tried it. And obviously Graham Hancock, among everyone else, has spoken, tons about what it has done for his life. But it makes you face the things about yourself that you don't want to deal with. And that's what a lot of spiritual progress is about. It's about dealing with aspects of yourself that are either hidden from yourself or that you just don't want to deal with. And that's kind of what Kundalini does as well.
All right. We have about 20 seconds left here before we come and head off to break here at the bottom of the hour. I want to get into some ancient stuff with you here.
Okay.
Ancient aliens, ancient history, where we come from, where do we go? You know what I'm saying? I think it'd be interesting to kind of get into that as well. with the audience here as we try and bring this all together tonight on Spaced Out Radio. Our guest, Seriah Azkath. Let's go into ancient studies, ancient aliens. Were we helped by a UFO-type species to help build society as to what we know it is today? We'll be back. All right, buddy, we're clear.
Okay, I'll be back in a minute.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Hello, Thurston Howell III. How's Lovey? My neck is just killing me today. I need to get back to the chiropractor. Snap my neck back in place. That's right, Dirty Filth. Put me on a table with Sasquatch rubbing me down in body oil. Thanks, buddy. Hey, Double Dan, how are you? Sounds like a cartoon, Filth. Oh, Tristan, you're lucky. You're going to the chiropractor tomorrow. I'm working up to that, applesauce. Working up to that. You back?
Yeah.
Cool.
I had to go find out what made noise in the other room, and I have no idea what it was. At some point, I just heard a big clang, and it was like, oh, interesting.
Oh, you got some aliens hanging out there.
Well, I assumed cat, but nothing seems to be amiss, so I don't know what made the clang.
This is where I always blame it on aliens, man.
That's reasonable.
It's just easier.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, and I got lots of sleep last night, too, man. I went to bed at like 10:05 last night. I never go to bed before 11 o'clock. And last night I was just drained.
That's how I've been last week or so. Like I said, normally at this point I'm wide awake and I'm like, oh, I'm a little tired.
Me too, man. Me
so
too.
I hope I'm making sense. I think I'm making sense.
I think you're making sense.
Okay. The problem is this stuff goes off in so many different directions at once. It's hard to like pick one.
Vin's got the answer. It's called Monday. That's right. It's always Monday, that damn Monday. Usually Wednesday's the day I get hit.
Usually it's Sunday for me.
No, mine's usually Wednesday. That's where I hit my wall. And then Saturday night, I'm like a zombie.
Yeah. Well, pre-pandemic, I'd kind of everything would build up to the weekends where did the road go, and then the last days of the Lost were on, and I wouldn't get home till like 8 a.m. Sunday, maybe get to sleep at 10 a.m. and then either sleep too late and be tired or not get enough sleep and be tired. But I'd always feel like crap Sunday night.
Makes sense. Makes sense. I think it's probably because I didn't go out in the forest this weekend. Hold on one second here. As I want to say a big thank you to Yogi, to Andrew, to Dave for the awesome super chats tonight. It's a great way to support what we do on this show. Thank you to everybody tuned on in, 143 so far on YouTube, and we appreciate that. Let's continue on here with the show right now. We passed the halfway point of Spaced Out Radio tonight. My name is Dave Scott. Thank you so much for joining us. Really do appreciate earning your listening ears. Want to remind you that if you missed portions of this show or others, check out our free archives by going to youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Just do old Davey the favor. Hit that subscribe button. Our website is spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you, including rocking out to Bumblefoot and reading up on Captain Shirk's SOR Newswire. Follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and on Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show. We continue on tonight with Seriah Azkath, and we're going to get into some ancient aliens and stuff like that here. Let's turn the page here a little bit, because this is always interesting, Seriah, because I'm not a big believer in the whole ancient aliens theory. And, that's a personal thing. I'm not saying it didn't happen, but when I watch the television show, I just roll my eyes, and it makes my brain hurt, because there's so much hyperbole and hypothesis there that it's really hard to say what is real and what is not. What's your take on it?
Well, first, real quick, I want to say, if anyone's interested in the Kundalini stuff, I've done a few shows on it on Where Did the Road Go. You can just search for Kundalini on the site, and it'll give you a lot of information there, which is just wheretheroadgo.com. I wanted to add that in the last break, but I didn't get a chance.
Oh, no worries.
We've done full-length, hour and a half long shows on that stuff. As far as ancient aliens, so the show can be fun. But it's not like, sometimes it's interesting because it'll bring up stuff I didn't know. It'll be like, oh, I didn't know about that place or that thing, and then I can go do other research. But it's definitely aimed at sort of a general audience, and it kills me when they say things like ancient alien theorists believe, as if they're one group, and they all believe this one thing. But it's entertainment is what it is. It's cool because it allows people to feel more comfortable talking about this stuff because it's popular. But as far as like actual research, there's not a whole lot of that there. My personal feelings are that it's entirely possible that we've been visited by aliens in the past, but I don't think it's necessary to explain the stuff we see. I do think that civilization has basically been cyclical, and that we are occasionally go through periods of destruction. And I think the last one was at the end of the last ice age. I think there's a good amount of evidence for that, and that a few remnants of that advanced civilization survived and were able to pass on knowledge, which then got kind of distilled and distorted over time, over the centuries. And thus, we look at stuff and we're just like, well, we can't explain that. It seems too advanced. It must have been aliens. But that, I don't know. That's never made sense to me.
Makes sense to me, man. Because it's always aliens. I'm just saying. I mean, I could be completely wrong on that. And there's I'm not going to lie, there is a good chance that I am. But But where I get confused is, and I'll be honest with you, I don't think, like, at least for me, I'm not saying anybody else, but for me, I don't think the television show has done any favors, because when I sit there and I look at um, the television show and I hear people, whether it's Graham Hancock or others, speak about all the ancient times when aliens were helping build the pyramids. And I realize, look, there's a few hieroglyphics out there that show some very strange, what looks to be UFOs or aliens. I'm not saying they haven't visited, not at all. Please don't think that. But I could say this, to say that they helped create all of humankind. I find that very hard to believe and hard to fathom, because there's so much that they helped way long ago to get, to build some pyramids, but they won't help today. This is where I get confused.
Sure. And like I said, I don't think it was aliens. The thing is, they edit those interviews so much on Ancient Aliens. I believe mutual friend Joshua Cutchin was on there, and I think he said they did 2.5 hours with him, and they used like 10 seconds. So, I mean, what you're getting is so watered down and so much bias toward, I think that show would have been better if it not been called Ancient Aliens, because I think they kind of want to explore other stuff, but they have to keep twisting it in to somehow relate to Ancient Aliens. And obviously people like that idea. They've liked it ever since Van Daniken, came up with it back in the late 60s. I just don't think it's necessary. I think it really it dismisses the ingenuity of people. It takes out the idea that we could have been. I see, this is part of it too. Like, so science will tell us everything kind of moves in a straight line. But ancient cultures have been telling us endlessly that things work in cycles, and everything else in nature works in cycles. There's no reason to think that there are not cycles of destruction on this planet that almost wipe out the human race. And we've seen evidence of that. We've seen, meteor strikes that would have caused massive devastation. There are super volcanoes that would have caused massive devastation. But we don't accept any of that has happened since the beginning of human beings on this planet, because any of those things would wipe out our current civilization now and leave us with just a few remnants. And, not much of what we have now would survive a massive destructive event. Our information wouldn't survive, and who knows what kind of mythology what did survive would then take on. So I don't think there's really evidence for ancient aliens per se. I think there's an interpretation that can be made that way, and I can't say that it's not possible, because it's certainly possible, but I don't think it's necessary. I think what we see can fully be explained by an advanced culture in ancient prehistory.
Okay, so do you think Atlantis disappeared into the ocean, or do you think that population was some sort of extraterrestrial species?
If Atlantis existed as a place, I'm sure it was human. It may not have existed as an actual place. It may have been more of a worldwide civilization that just kind of got mythologized by the time it got to Plato. But the dating, takes it back to the end of the last ice age, which is where you had a massive seawater rise. And no matter what ended the last ice age, it was extreme. You would have had volcanoes going off. You would have had earthquakes. You would have had massive floodwaters, tsunamis. You would have got most of a lot of the world around the coastlines was completely inundated. The water rose 300 to 400 feet. And we know there are places off, Graham Hancock has shown there are numerous structures off the coasts of places like India that have been underwater since the last ice age. You get them off the coast of the Americas, down in Bahamas and stuff. There's, there's so much evidence that there was a large civilization here at one point that just has hints that it was there at this point, because we're talking 12,000 years ago. And the scale of destruction is not like anything we have ever seen since then.
Why do you think they left?
What do you mean?
The extraterrestrials, or went into some sort of hiding?
I don't think there were extraterrestrials. I think it's all been people this whole time. Now, we could have very well had people who could travel to space. We may have gone to places like Mars or the moon in previous civilizations, but I don't think we need aliens for any of that.
So you think an advanced civilization traveled back in time to help?
No, I don't think we. No, I think it's just we've had cycles of advanced civilizations in our past. We've hit certain levels of advancement, and then a natural disaster comes along and wipes everything out, and we start from scratch again. I mean, we have two destruction events at the end of the last ice age. We have the Lesser Dryas, which lasted for 2,000 years, so the Earth was slowly warming up, and then suddenly it's plunged into the depths of the ice age again, which was likely a comet or asteroid strike. And then 2,000 years later, suddenly everything just melts. And even if you had taken those glaciers and moved them to the equator, they wouldn't have melted that fast. It needed an external source, either another strike of some sorts or as Robert Schoch suggested, a solar flare that was powerful enough to melt the glaciers almost instantly, or as Velikovsky and the Electric Universe people suggest, a close approach to something like Venus that set off a plasma bolt that would have destroyed those glaciers and melted them almost instantly. And whatever civilization was there, and you can call it Atlantis or whatever, was almost immediately just inundated and gone.
It's almost biblical.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, and the Bible is only one of many ancient accounts of a worldwide inundation. You figure there was a lake that covered most of Canada and part of northern North America. There was a glacial lake there, and one day that just let loose into the Atlantic. In fact, the ground is still going up in both Canada and in the northern U.S. It's still rising from the pressure of all that ice and water that was on it back then.
Makes for good hockey.
So, I mean, you figure here we are 12,000 years later, and the ground is still rebounding from the weight of all that ice and water. And all that water was dumped into the Atlantic instantly. It just like an ice dam broke and everything just went in. And you're seeing that nowadays as the climate changes too. You're seeing these large glacial lakes that are especially in areas that have high mountains and stuff. The ice is starting to melt, and it's creating these glacial lakes. And when these lakes, get weak enough that it's like a glacial dam bursts, and you have a massive torrent of water coming down the mountain.
All right, let's get to Jules here, who is asking, so if you definitely don't think it's aliens, what are we experiencing in the skies throughout history and now then?
That's a great question. I don't have a good answer for that. I don't know what it is. But I don't think it fits the alien thing because, A, it's been happening for so long. B, for it to be aliens, we would have to have been visited by 1,000 different types of aliens in millions of different types of ships. You rarely, you get sort of, like you were talking about the triangle UFO you saw, right? Triangles are not an uncommon thing, but rarely are they the exact same thing. Like you're rarely going to find someone who saw the exact same thing you saw. You'll see something similar. And that would suggest we're almost like a superhighway of aliens. And they're here constantly doing who knows what, because what could they possibly need to be here for at this level? However, if we're dealing with something that's a more spiritual phenomena, and I don't know what that would be, but something that is intrinsic to our existence, that is somehow connected to us, connected to the planet, I think that's more likely. These things may exist right alongside us, but in frequencies we can't see. A lot of time, Keel pointed this out a long time ago, that these things seem to first appear in sort of the infrared. There are people who have taken pictures in infrared that have UFOs in them that you couldn't see with the naked eye. There's an episode of UFO Hunters that someone finally found for me because I couldn't find the episode, where a police helicopter is shooting a UFO following the helicopter that they couldn't see, but they were picking it up on their infrared camera. There's a lot of evidence that this stuff is right there with us the whole time. We're just not able to interact with it. So I think it's from here. What its actual nature is, I think the whole point is that they're not, we're not meant to know, or we can't understand what its nature is. The trickster element in this stuff is very strong as well.
That would bring up a tie between the spiritual and the ufological.
Yes. I mean, anytime you think you might have an answer or someone might have an answer, it's like it just intentionally throws a monkey wrench into that and shows you something that doesn't fit what you thought it was. And it's like it almost seems intentional, just to keep you asking questions.
Jules is asking, do you think this could all be multiversal, or a multiversal bleed through?
Sure. I mean, it's a possibility. It's just with that, my only issue is we don't exactly know what multiverses are. Like we can't prove they exist. So it's kind of like using an unknown to explain another unknown. It's certainly a possibility. It could be, I think it was Jane Roberts Seth who said that it was that UFOs were consciousness from another reality. And I thought that was really interesting because that was back in the early 70s. That was not a concept people had for UFOs back then. But his concept was that these things were consciousness being projected from a different reality. So it's certainly a possibility.
Good question, Jules. Thank you for that. All right. This interview, I'm going to be honest with you, a lot more heavy than I thought it would be. And it's got my brain going, and my brain is just like, okay, well, ask this, ask that. And it's like, well, I've already done that. So, I mean, when you were looking into this, what clues did you have that really pushed you towards your own theories?
Part of what bothers me about most of the theories out there is that we haven't, even in all this time, we haven't been able to prove any of this stuff. You know what I mean? Like, if you look at cryptids, so, there are plenty of people who will say Bigfoot is a flesh and blood creature. And whereas that's certainly a possibility, why haven't we found the absolute evidence of that yet? With so many Bigfoot encounters, with so much stuff out there. The same with UFOs. If these things were as simple as alien intervention, it seems like at some point we would have been able to prove that. People are stuck on trying to prove this stuff, where, like I said, if you take an honest look at the stuff and the fact that this stuff has been reported consistently throughout cultures, throughout time, it clearly exists. I don't think we should waste our time trying to prove it to the people who don't believe in it. I think we should work more at looking at it with fresh eyes, because clearly the approaches we've been using for the last 50 years they've kind of given us everything they're going to give us. So I think we need to ask different questions. We need to look at it differently. And that's kind of where my approach has been for quite a while now, is kind of we don't have the answers. Why don't we have the answers? Probably because we're asking the wrong questions. Probably, ghost hunters will go out and they'll be like, well, look at all this evidence. It's like, yes, you've recorded that there's something anomalous going on, but it doesn't tell us what it is. I've heard amazing EVPs that I have no doubt were legitimate EVPs, but it doesn't tell us what the source of the EVP is. I've presented the idea that, an EVP could be a spirit recording. An EVP could be coming from a psychic thing from the person trying to record the EVP. It could be that the person that, so that the ghost hunter himself is actually imprinting the EVP on the recording. It could be that the ghost hunter is unconsciously translating something from a spirit and imprinting it on the recording. There's so many different things. And when you talk about a spirit, how do we know any of these things are what they say they are? Because there's no test to say. I mean, just because something knows something doesn't mean it is what it is. These things have shown throughout the years to be very tricky and to have lied in many, many occasions.
And you open up a big can of worms with me there, because 98% of the entire paranormal field does not conduct anything scientific.
No. I scientific method is very precise, and you'll get people saying, well, I'm doing this scientifically, and it's like, not really. Yeah. I mean, you're using tools, but you're not generating something that can be repeated, that can be falsified. You're starting with a theory and trying to prove it, rather than collecting evidence and creating a testable theory behind it.
Very true. Very true. And that's the biggest argument that I have. Like, how do we take you seriously? Because I know for me, the minute, where I've had ghost teams come up to me in the past saying, hey, we'd love to be on your show. And I'd be like, okay, well, what stories can you tell me? Because just coming on to talk ghosts is boring. You got to bring some stories. Mm-hmm. Well, we talk about the scientific aspect of everything. Stop. No, you're not coming on. You're not coming on. I know I sound like a jerk when I do that, man. But I mean, a lot of these people need to wake up that you're not conducting anything scientific.
No. I mean, you're maybe doing something somewhat logical, but so many of these people are already like, okay, I believe that these are spirits of dead people. How can we prove that? And that's not a scientific path.
No, it's not. Or having a team skeptic.
Right.
That's the one that drives me nuts right now.
I mean, there is something to what ghost hunters capture. I have no doubt whatsoever. And again, this is phenomena that's been reported cross-culture forever. So yes, there is something there. And I think some ghosts are probably either recordings of strong emotional stuff that's happened in that location. And certain locations may be more prone to recording that stuff than others. And again, when you look at information theory, when you look at the information theory of reality, that information may be there and accessible to certain people who come into that environment. When you're interacting with something, when something seems to actively be there, I mean, we don't know if that's a ghost, if it's like a formerly living person, if it's some kind of poltergeist manifestation, if it's some kind of trickster spirit who's just going to behave however you think it should behave. If it's some kind of tulpa that we're generating. I mean, there's so many different things and no way to easily rule them out. That's the problem. So any kind of scientific approach would have to be able to rule this stuff out.
And we're not at that point yet, especially with the paranormal, because we don't even know if what we're studying.
Right, exactly. So we need to ask different questions. Like, EVPs can be very interesting. I mean, I caught one on accident that was really freaky to me. And I've never tried to record an EVP before because it's not, I mean, yes, EVPs exist. People catch them. But what does that tell us? Other than the fact that EVPs exist.
Very true. Very true. So quickly here, so we got about 40 seconds. 509 is asking, what do you think of angels being good aliens, Sumerian kings, list, and time travel? Actually, that's too big of a question. We'll get to that one afterwards. Where's Eugene's question? I had a question from Eugene here, and I'm blowing it here because we're running out of time. Damn it.
You're going to hit him when we come back?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, we could do that. I found the question. and we will definitely hit it when we come back. We have Seriah Azkath for another 30 minutes here on Spaced Out Radio. We are flying on by tonight, just flying. Our wings are flapping as we have them for another 30 minutes before we are going to get to the bottom of the hour of hour 3, get to the SOR News Wire and the Thought of the Dave. Stay tuned. We have a jam-packed third hour. Spaced Out Radio continues right after this. All right, I'm just going to run my dogs out. I'll be right back. All right. We got 6 minutes.
All right.
All right, brother, I'm back. There we go. All right. So we got a few more questions coming from our audience. And then we have some more topics for you. But when we get to the bottom of the hour, I'll get you to just hold on through the break until I go to break. And then I'll say a proper good night to you.
Okay.
Yeah, man, this has been good.
All right, good.
It's good stuff. Okay, we've got about 30 seconds. Big thank you to Chad, Yogi, Andrew, and Dave for the amazing super chats tonight. Really do appreciate the love and support you guys give us on a nightly basis. Thank you to everybody who's tuned on in, listening in for the first time. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button, whether you're on StreamYard, whether you're on Twitch, StreamYard, YouTube, or Twitch. We really appreciate that. And yeah, we're going to have a good time with this tonight. So we got one more hour here. Just sit back, relax, have some fun. And I apologize that I figured out why I'm getting sore and everything. Oh, we got a rainstorm moving in, and it's screwing me up right now. Screwing me right up. But that's about it. That's about it. All right, guys. Hold on. Here we go.
Would you like to connect with us? Head to spacedoutradio.com for all your latest show info. Now, back to Dave Scott and SOR.
Third and final hour of Spaced Out Radio is underway tonight. My name is Dave Scott. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us. We really do appreciate earning your listening ears. We welcome back everyone listening in on our terrestrial affiliates around North America, digitally on TalkStream Live, Revolution Radio, and KPNL. All of our archives are free by going to youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Just do old Davey the favor, hit that subscribe button. The Desert Clam has set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club. Jaspedius. Jaspedius is your password. Use it wisely, space travelers, as the Clam sets the password each and every night right here on Spaced Out Radio. Our website is spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you, including rocking out to Bumblefoot and reading up on Captain Shirk's SOR Newswire. Follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and on Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show. For the final time tonight, we introduce our guest, Seriah Azkath, as we are talking everything about ancient aliens to Kundalini, UFOs. We're getting into everything tonight, which makes it always an entertaining show. Seriah, welcome back.
Yeah, glad to be here.
All right, let's get to Eugene's question, who is asking, what do you think is the end game for extraterrestrials?
I don't know if there are extraterrestrials. I mean, that's the first thing. If there are, if what the UFO experience is extraterrestrial, I kind of find that disappointing. I think the UFO experience, the whole thing, is literally a spiritual awakening for people. But I don't think they're aliens. I think what we're dealing with is something that may be alien to us, but not from necessarily another planet. I think it's something that's here with us and always has been.
That makes a lot of sense. I know there's a lot of people theorizing that right now. All right, let's get to 509. What do you think of the Sumerian Kings list, angels and time travel?
The Sumerian Kings list. I'm trying to remember if that's the one where they have the very long lifespans early on and then it drops down. Is that what the Sumerian Kings list is?
I'm looking it up right now.
Because I know I can't remember if that's Sumerian or Egyptian, or maybe both of them have that, where you have these very long reigns from a single king. And some people have speculated that it was like a dynasty type of situation. But it's, again, when we're looking at the possibility that there was an advanced human civilization with only remnants surviving, it's possible that that civilization had figured out a way to stop aging. I mean, in our civilization, we are 5 to 10 years away from being able to stop and reverse aging. So there's no reason to think a prior civilization wouldn't have already made that discovery and potentially given people very long lifespans. But when that civilization ended, they weren't able to continue to give people those long lifespans.
Minister Elaine is asking, what do you think about what is causing these electric bursts? Because she has that too.
A lot of people have that. It's surprising how common it is. If she's talking about knocking out electronics, I think we're just electric. We're electric people. We just don't realize it. Science and biology doesn't really pay attention to the fact that we really do generate an electric field. And with some people, that electric field is strong enough to actually affect the things around us.
All right, let's move on here because as we wait for more questions from our audience, I want to ask you, one of the things that you have interest in is these world mysteries of the unknown around the planet. What are a couple of them that really stick out to you?
Oh, God, that's a great question. I think locations, places like Skinwalker Ranch and stuff are very fascinating to me. Like there's a forest I think it's in Russia, that has had just so much weird stuff associated with it. I can never remember the name of the place, but everything from UFOs to humanoid encounters to missing people. I mean, it's such an area of like high strangeness. And you get that all around the world. There are these places that are just filled with high strangeness, and it's all this stuff grouped together. It's not like one type of thing that happens there. Even Skinwalker Ranch, it's not one type of thing that happens there. You get a lot of different stuff. I think at this point, the Skinwalker Ranch stuff has been kind of, the well has been poisoned a little bit. But there are plenty of places around the planet that just have unexplained phenomena associated with them.
The Hoya Forest in Romania.
Yeah, that's one of them, definitely.
See, for me, I like these triangles.
Yes, the Bridgewater Triangle.
Bridgewater, the Alaskan Triangle, there's a triangle of the Great Lakes.
Yes.
There's never mind the Bermuda Triangle, but there's all of these triangles in the world that just seem to make weird things happen.
Yeah. And again, that's why I say sometimes, what sets off the weirdness is the place. That's one part of the puzzle. And it may be, again, with something like high solar activity, maybe that's when these things really become active.
That I don't know.
If psi abilities raise during high solar activity, maybe we're seeing the same thing with the energy from the planet.
Do you think it's the planet that is causing this? Maybe from inner Earth?
It could be. I mean, the planet is also electrical. Electricity is a major component to all of this. I don't know exactly why. I think it's just basic to existence, but and to life is that things are electrical, and I'm fascinated by the electric universe theory because that also that takes the whole cosmology element into the electrical realm, and it seems to work very, very well, even in places where the traditional theories fail.
So what other mysteries do you like around the world that really intrigue you?
I don't know. Göbekli Tepe is definitely a very interesting place. I always look forward to them finding more stuff there. I mean, because there you're looking at a 12,000-year-old structure. It's, it was made with very exquisite detail and with a lot of purpose. I'm fascinated with the work that Laird Scranton has done with the Dogon and that whole system of information that seems to also exist in places like India and China and the Judaic system of stuff, where you see these hints of this cosmology that was encoded into these myths. And again, this all suggests that there is a ancient pool of knowledge that someone tried to preserve. And, who knows how far that really goes back.
What about monsters? Whether it's Sasquatch, whether it's gnomes, whether it's Mokili Mbembe, the dinosaur.
God, I so wanted them to find a real dinosaur. When I was a kid, that was one of the big things. It's like, oh man, if there were real dinosaurs out there. Monsters are interesting. There's always the possibility that something like Bigfoot could exist in areas like the Pacific Northwest, where there's massive amounts of forest, or in the Himalayas, or some of the mountains in China and stuff like that. But the proliferation of Bigfoot encounters, and especially the connection to paranormal experiences, lights and poltergeist activity after them, and so on and so forth, suggests to me that these monsters are not flesh and blood, at least not all the time. They may be manifestations. Joshua Cutchin's book, where he talked about the different smells associated with the paranormal, he talked about sulfur being the most common smell. Sulfur is the smell of decay. And I often wonder if these things are manifestations that only exist for a short period of time. And once they manifest, they immediately start deteriorating, hence giving off that sulfuric smell of decay, like they can only hold their composition so long. It's very possible. I came up with the idea of a wandering bit of consciousness. Like this one, you may encounter a wandering bit of consciousness, and when you encounter it, your brain doesn't know what it is. It's something completely unknown to it. And if it scares you, that, because the unknown often scares us, your brain then goes monster, and suddenly you're seeing a winged creature, because your brain is a filter. It's not necessarily showing you what's there. It's showing you its interpretation of what's there. So it could be that these things are, especially the one-off monster things. I think those are manifestations partially created by us. Some of them where you get repeated monster type of things in the same area. These may be more tulpa-like. You may have something that once it's defined continues to exist with that definition. And there certainly could be, if we have alternate dimensions, there could be that goblin dimension where these things occasionally filter through, come through portals, come through holes that lead somewhere that we just don't even understand, and either deteriorate once they get here or just disappear, back into that same hole. I mean, again, I think the best approach to understanding this stuff is to look at it in as many different ways as we can, and hope that we come across something that we haven't before, because we've been too narrow-minded in our approach to it.
See, the whole portals and dimension thing really, really intrigues me.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because, I mean, we don't know what's happening on different timelines, if there is such a thing.
Right.
And it seems like mainstream science is starting to lead to the point where they believe there is, they just haven't been able to figure it on out. But I mean, if we're living multiple lives in multiple dimensions, this might also explain little nuances like the Mandela effect.
Yes. Yeah.
I'll give you something weird that happened here the other night. We had David Weatherly on as a guest, and he's a good friend of this show. And a couple hours before the show, I was talking to him about his new book. Because I saw, it was either on Facebook or Instagram, I had seen his new book, which was Sea Monsters of the Great Lakes. And it looked like his artist's type of picture on the cover. And I remember seeing his name by David Weatherly, and I was like, oh, cool. He's got a new book. So as I'm talking to him about it, and I said, yeah, man, let's talk about the new book with sea monsters and everything. He goes, yeah, we could talk that. We haven't talked too much about that over time. He goes, but we have a problem. And I said, what's that? He goes, I haven't written a book like that. And I said, what do you mean? I just saw it on your social media. He's like, no, man, I have not written a book like that. He goes, it's a good topic. I should probably think about doing something like that in the future. He goes, but I haven't written a book like that. That isn't my book.
That's awesome.
And dude, to this day, it still trips me out. I mean, we're only, 5-6 days past that happening, but it just absolutely trips me out.
Yep.
Because I saw it.
Reality is morphic. That's the thing. It's not this solid, stable thing that we think it is. Like I said earlier, I mean, our perceptions are molded by what our brain decides is important to us. Our memories are as much emotional interpretations as they are recordings of the event, if not more emotional interpretations than it is actual recordings. It's not like, a video recorder recording the events and playing it back to you. And as you remember things, those memories also alter because they recreate them in your mind. Reality itself is not this stable thing. I mean, it's vibrations, and I think we can shift I think we can affect things forward and backwards in time, and that we can also shift the realities we're in. And I've had plenty of experiences like that where I have, at one point, as a magical practice, was trying something called perichoresis, I think it was called, which was the idea of trying to intentionally shift your reality. And a couple of times it was very successful, and to the point where it kind of freaked me out. And I was like, well, I don't want to screw up my life by shifting to a reality that may not be so good, but they were subtle changes, but nothing I could easily explain, especially in conjunction of trying to do that very thing,
Very true. Very true. I mean, I don't really know how to explain it. So when you look at something like the Mandela effect, what do you think's going on there?
Well, I think there's a couple of things. I mean, it could very well be there's a shift in reality, because some of them are really, really interesting. I think sometimes it's just poor memory. But like the one that gets me is the James Bond one with Jaws, because I forget who pointed that one out to me. Oh, it was actually the first guest I ever had on Where Did the Road Go, but I can't remember his name now. But he wrote The Universe Solved, and he was talking about the Mandela effect. And in the James Bond movie, whatever movie that is that Jaws is in, at the end, he's like laying on the curb or whatever, and this girl comes over to him, and she smiles at him, and she has braces on, and they kind of connect because his mouth is full of metal and her mouth is full of metal. But if you go watch that now, the girl doesn't have braces. And the thing about it is it doesn't make sense if the girl doesn't have braces.
Yeah, that one's kind of weird.
So it's not just a matter of someone remembering something being spelled different. Like the whole plot point doesn't work if the girl doesn't have braces.
One that really interests me is the Ford logo.
Ford logo. I don't know if I know that one.
Okay, the original Ford logo, the one we see now on the Ford, on the second bar on the F, has a little curl in it, much like the Dairy Queen curl. Okay? And I actually have a key in my hand that shows, I don't know how well that'll show up, but if that's a Ford key and there is no Q, little curly Q on the end of the F.
Is it possible they had two different logos?
No. Ford doesn't recognize the other logo.
Huh. See, and the fact that you have something with that other logo makes it that much more interesting, because that's not just memory. That you have a physical artifact of that.
Right. And Sovereign's here. Well, they update logos, Dave. No, Ford has never used the logo. It's just a straight bar. They haven't updated it. I think I did my homework on that one, Sovereign. Thank you. So we have about 5 minutes left with you tonight on Spaced Out Radio. And, with the world mysteries that are out there, when you look around, do you think any of them are going to be solved? Whether it's Bigfoot, whether it's aliens or UFOs or ultra-terrestrials, or whether it's ghosts and life after death, what do you think is going to be the first one we solve?
Oh man, that's hard because I don't know how we solve some of these things. I think we need to understand our reality better, and we need to get out of the materialist paradigm we're in. As long as we're in this materialist paradigm, we're not going to solve any of these mysteries. These things are not going to obey that sort of strict material rule. These things are consciousness based, if nothing else. So, I mean, if we find a flesh and blood Bigfoot, certainly that's going to explain at least some of those encounters, probably not all of them. But like I said, I have no problem with a flesh and blood Bigfoot existing side by side with a more high strangeness sort of mimicry of that flesh and blood phenomena, because that's something we also see. I mean, in UFO, I remember John Keel writing about these people seeing this plane. It looked like a perfectly normal plane, except the thing was flying very, very slow and was very, very low to the ground and made absolutely no sound. So this stuff can mimic very normal stuff. It's entirely possible that you have experienced or seen something that was not what you think it was, but you wouldn't know because it seemed like everything else that's out there. I mean, it's possible that people have mild poltergeist experiences without realizing that it was a poltergeist experience. You know, they leave their key on the counter and they come back later and they can't find their key and they just think, well, where did I put it? They don't think, well, maybe something moved it. And that's, you know, obviously the rational way to think is I must have put it somewhere else. But how would we know, really, if something is weird or if something is not weird? And I think until you start focusing on that, that's when the stuff ramps up. It seems to respond to our paying attention to it. So, you know, the world is a very strange place. I don't know that any of this stuff is going to be easily solved. The best we can have, I mean, like when you talk about, you know, life after death, I think some of the best evidence comes from children. The children who can spontaneously remember detailed past lives. I mean, that may be the best evidence we're going to have of life after death for quite a while. Because how else do you really explain that?
I don't know. That I don't know. And that's really the answer to a lot of these mysteries that are out there is I don't know.
That's the best answer. And that's, you know, I mean, I get very, very suspicious of anyone who thinks they have all the answers because it means they're ignoring the stuff that doesn't fit.
Or they're throwing in personal opinion.
Right, exactly. And people mistake belief for fact very, very often, especially in these fields.
2 minutes. We got about 90 seconds to go here. Do me a favor. Tell everybody, take that time, tell everybody where they can find your show and your research.
WhereDidTheRoadGo.com. Links to everything is there. I'm working on a book on my personal experiences, which I guess is going to be the first one. And then I'm working on another book that takes all these theories and stuff and tries to kind of lay them out with all the different possibilities and different ways of looking at things and different interconnections that I've found. Those will be, I mean, when they're done, I'm hoping to get the personal one done before the end of the year. And WhereDidTheRoadGo.com will have all that stuff. You can find all our linked sites there from Facebook to Twitter to Discord. There's at least one show a week. If you're interested in the music show, it's thelastexit.org. And that's, you know, metal, industrial, but on a very underground sense. You're not going to hear big mainstream bands on the show very often, if ever. So it's a lot of stuff you're not going to hear anywhere else.
Love it, man. Love it. So, Seriah, I want to say a big thank you to you coming on Spaced Out Radio tonight. It's a real privilege to get to know you. I've heard a lot of good things about you. Now that we've done this interview, I think you're a smart dude, man, and you kind of got it going on. Keep up the great work.
Oh, thank you very much. This has been a blast.
Yeah, for sure, my friend. For sure. So thank you so much. I'm going to get you to hold on because we're going to head out to break here at the bottom of the hour. Coming up next, We have the SOR Newswire. We have the Thought of the Day. Stay tuned. Spaced Out Radio continues with the news and the thought right after this. All right. Good job, my friend.
Cool.
We'll give you a few claps. Appreciate you.
Oh, thank you.
Appreciate you. Thank you for doing this. I hope you had fun.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right.
And if you ever need a guest, just hit me up.
Will do, man. Yeah, for sure.
When I get the book done, I'll shoot a copy your way.
Would love it. Would love it. All right, brother. I got to go get ready for the news here. So
right.
Thank you. You take care, okay?
You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right. That was good. Good stuff. Thank you, Itzy Zaza, for that awesome super chat. Put you up there. Good, we got you up there. Dirty Filth, what's going on? Look, I don't like having to put anybody in timeout, okay? But when you start making brutal accusations that we are a psyop and that we are acting strangely, you know what? It pisses me off. No, I'm not freeing Sovereign for being an idiot tonight. All right? Telling me why people are leaving this show when our numbers are records every single night, right? And our numbers, I watch the numbers. So if you're going to try and bitch slap me in my own chat room, it's not going to work. Not going to work at all. Okay? So that really, really irked me. I don't get irked very often by what you guys say in the chat room. I think I got pretty thick skin. That pissed me off. Really pissed me off. I could honestly explode right now. And I'm taking every piece of my energy right now not to. Thank you to Itzy Zaza, Long Island Bigfoot, Vinster, Chad, Yogi, Andrew, and Dave. I really appreciate the love tonight. Thank you to our new subscribers as well. And we will be coming back right now. We've rounded third. We're headed for home tonight on Spaced Out Radio. My name is Dave Scott. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us. We really do appreciate earning your listening ears. We want to remind you that if you've missed most of this show or others, you can check out our free archives by going to youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Just do old Davey the favor. Hit that subscribe buttons. Our website, spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you, including rocking out to Bumblefoot and reading up on Captain Shirk's SOR Newswire. Follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and on Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show. Speaking of the news, the news is always changing, which is why we bring you the SOR Newswire at the back end of every show, where we get to the weird, the strange, the wacky, and sometimes the ufological. I'm loving all this UFO news lately, man. I really, really am. A government contractor may have fragments recovered from the U.S. crash site of a UFO, says former Nevada Senator Harry Reid. The claims were published as part of a lengthy report in The New Yorker titled How the Pentagon Started Taking UFOs Seriously. In the piece, Reid is quoted as saying he believes Lockheed Martin, the American aerospace firm, is in possession of such materials, but he could not say for certain because he never got approval from the Pentagon to inspect the crash fragments himself, despite years of effort. I was told for decades that Lockheed had some of these retrieved materials, he told the magazine, and I tried to get, as I recall, a classified approval by the Pentagon to have me go look at the stuff. They would not approve that. I don't know what all the numbers were, what kind of classification it was, but they would not give that to me. Reid was originally reported as making similar comments in a 2017 New York Times story on the Pentagon's covert UFO program, though the paper was later forced to append the correction to the article, softening the then senator's statements. Salon published its own in-depth look into the claims made by various actors in the blockbuster Times report, which the New Yorker credits as legitimizing the national conversation surrounding UFOs. Reid has been a longtime advocate for research into unidentified aerial phenomena, spearheading an effort which ran from 2007 to 2012 called the Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program. Pentagon watchers believe the program may still exist today, albeit in an informal manner. Well, we know that's not true. We know it is going. Military contractors made the bulk of the $20 million program's budget, in particular Bigelow Aerospace, back in the day. We all know that they used some of that money to buy into MUFON, too. Let's just be honest. Oh, let's talk about some Lou Elizondo here, right? Let's get into it. The former head of the ATIP program says he has seen very, very compelling data that confirm the existence of technologically advanced UFOs. A highly anticipated report on unidentified aerial phenomena is due to be released by the Director of National Intelligence and the Department of Defense by June 1st. And Elizondo says if the Pentagon officials reveal that the U.S. has been leapfrogged by technology by foreign adversaries such as China or Russia, it would constitute an intelligence failure on the level of 9/11. Elizondo said recently revealed footage of strange tic-tac-shaped flying objects buzzing U.S. military ships were real, and says it's time that the government told the public what it knew about them. He says, there's something in our skies. We don't know what it is. I think Lou knows. We don't know how it works. I think Lou knows. We don't know what we can fully do. I think Lou knows. We don't know who is behind the wheel. I think Lou knows. We don't know its intentions. I bet Lou knows. And there isn't a damn thing we can do about it. Lou knows that's a fact. Lawmakers on the House Intelligence Committee ordered defense officials to explain the frequent sightings of strange flying objects spotted by military in hopes it will dispel some of the rumors and fears surrounding them. Elizondo said people should manage their expectations around what will be contained in the report, basically saying probably not going to get very much of the juice. In March, it was revealed that the U.S. Navy warships stationed off the coast of L.A. encountered swarms of mysterious drones, which pursued them at high speed in low visibility in 2019. The series of encounters with unsuspecting UAVs or unmanned aerial vehicles in July 2019 saw as many as 6 mystery aircraft swarm several U.S. warships close to a sensitive training area in the Channel Islands. The head of the United States Navy, Admiral Michael Gilday, later admitted he had no idea where a swarm of mysterious tic-tac-shaped drones that menaced the 4 U.S. destroyers originated. Gilday's response appears to rule out the theory that the drones could have come from a secret U.S. military program. We got aliens. We got to admit this. It's coming soon, but it's not the Russians, it's not the Chinese. We got aliens. Question isn't, what are they? Question is, why now? Seriously, it's why now. That's all I'm going to say. We should all know about why now. At least that's what I think. Could be wrong. You never know. But apparently, I'm just a spy. Who knew? A blinding flash of light, something unidentified overhead, or aliens at the door. Somewhere the truth is out there. Canadians appear to be seeing more out there while scanning the night skies in increasing numbers. The COVID-19 pandemic has people spending more time outdoors, which has led to a growing interest in astronomy and unusual calls to RCMP 911 dispatchers. Canadians, don't do that. Shame on you for doing that. Don't do it. Don't call the police on this. The Alberta Centers revealed that nearly 900,000 calls last year, and it's the unusual ones, not requiring police, fire, or EMS to be sent out, that tend to stand out in the minds of the 160 dispatchers. There were definitely some themes about unusual UFO sightings and satellites, said Tracy Duvall, acting operations manager in Red Deer, Alberta. We were getting a lot of calls with SpaceX satellite launches. They're a very specific pattern in the sky. They're not hitting the ground, and we could just explain very quickly to people that there are actual satellites out there. SpaceX is a U.S. aerospace company founded by business magnate Elon Musk, who is Canadian as well. Duval said there are some people out there who are convinced that aliens have already landed and they are trying to break into their homes. Makes you chuckle and say, no, I'm pretty sure you're all right. People do think that, though. We have had situations where people are saying, no, it's legit. The aliens are coming. Sometimes it's making sure that they don't actually have someone breaking into their house when they're mistaking it for some extraterrestrial kind of experience. Evan Davis of Shellbrook, Saskatchewan, has had his own close encounter while driving to work early in the morning in late February. It was just kind of twilight. The sun was coming up from behind me, and all of a sudden there was this flash, and then there was this big, huge fireball, and it was leaving a lit trail that stayed for a second or two behind it as it fell. That's not aliens, that's called a meteor. Can we not tell the difference? It's something I won't forget. It was spectacular, and the whole thing lasted about 6 or 7 seconds, because it's a meteor, and it lit up the whole sky, and then it was gone, because it was a meteor. A comet fragment, oh, here we go, burning up in the Earth's atmosphere did light up the early morning sky over Alberta and Saskatchewan in February. Winnipeg-based ufology research released a survey in March that indicated sightings of UFOs across Canada, levitating discs, erratic lights, and floating triangular objects increased by 46% in 2020. The center's Chris Rutkowski said the total of 1,243 sightings is one of the highest recorded in a single year. A longtime astronomer suggests people are simply watching the night sky more during the pandemic. It really has become a resurgence in astronomy, said Robert Waldron, president of the Royal Astronomical Society of Canada in Saskatoon, who noted telescopes are in short supply. People are suddenly noticing the night sky. They haven't taken the time to notice it before, so what astronomers have been watching for years and know exactly what it is, people are looking up and saying, I don't know what it is, so it must be a UFO. It's always aliens, Rob. Always aliens. A huge Chinese rocket part is making an out-of-control descent to Earth. The 30-meter-tall, 21-ton rocket booster, launched by China last week, could fall in areas as far north as New York State and as far south as New Zealand. An enormous rocket component that China recently launched is literally out of control. The rocket debris, which is estimated to weigh more than 20 metric tons, will most likely splash down in remote ocean waters, but its current trajectory also has it passing over urban areas as far north as New York and as south as New Zealand. China's Long March 5B rocket blasted off last Wednesday and successfully delivered the first Tianhe module of the nation's new space station into orbit. Unfortunately, the massive core stage of this particular rocket, known as CZ-5B, also ended up in orbit. Yeah, that's never good. Expendable rocket parts that enter orbit are often equipped to perform deorbit burns, maneuvers that guide them into controlled re-entries of the atmosphere over unpopulated regions. Ground-based radar trackers have revealed that the 30-meter-tall rocket is tumbling in space, confirming that Chinese space officials do not have control over the component and therefore cannot perform a deorbit burn that would ensure a safe re-entry. China already sparked worldwide criticism when it initially debuted the CZ-5B in May 2020, a launch that also placed the core booster into an uncontrollable orbit. Debris from its wild re-entry was reportedly scattered across villages in the Ivory Coast. Luckily, there were no accounts of injuries or fatalities caused by the impacts. It was seemingly a successful launch until we started getting information about a re-entry of a rocket body, a re-entry that was really dangerous, said Jim Bridenstine, who was NASA's administrator at the time. It flew over population centers and it re-entered Earth's atmosphere. It could have been extremely dangerous. We're really fortunate in the sense that it doesn't appear to have hurt anybody. It's not unusual for rocket parts to fail in safety deorbit. Just a few weeks ago, the second stage of booster of SpaceX's Falcon 9 made an uncontrolled re-entry that ultimately dumped a heavy pressure tank onto a farm in Washington state. However, China has drawn another round of consternation and rebuke from international space officials due to the sheer size of its core, which is about 7 times larger than the Falcon 9 second stage. Both CZ-5B launches have left their core stage in orbit for uncontrollable re-entry, Jonathan McDowell says. They are over 20 metric tons, and it has been standard practice for 30 years for the rest of the world not to leave big objects this big, or even half this big, in orbit without a controlled deorbit. This design choice in 2021 is unacceptable and tarnishes China's great achievement in launching Tianhe, McDowell said. All right. Hey, if you've never seen Mercury, the planet, this week could be your time. We can see it in the night sky this week. Yes, it's time to go stargazing. With the super pink moon now out of the way, our satellite enters its last quarter phase and rises late enough at night to leave the evening sky dark and star-filled. However, the highlight comes not from the stars, but from the little planet Mercury, which Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday will appear to be close to the beautiful Pleiades star cluster. It will be viewable just after sunset in the northwestern sky, so you'll have to be quick, but it should make a great sight for anyone wanting to tick Mercury off their list. Yes, our satellite will reach its final last quarter phase. It essentially means that the moon rises after midnight, clearing the way for 10 successive nights of dark, moonless skies. However, get up early in the morning and you'll see our satellite in the southeast with Saturn at about 6 degrees to its upper left, and brighter Jupiter over twice as farther away in the east. The moon will be halfway between those two planets. This is exciting. The smallest, hottest, and fastest moving planet is in for a great month of May. It's going to get as far from the sun as almost ever it gets, which makes it the perfect time to tick the swift planet off your list if you're one counting. And for those of us still thinking that Pluto is still a planet, not a dwarf planet, maybe we'll get to see that one day too. I doubt it. But either way, it's still a planet. Go look for Mercury. It's going to be good. Where are we here? Okay, moving on. Let's go right here. Now let's go this one. Built on a foundation of dreams and unimaginable wealth, the walls of once great mansions hide a chilling history. Earlier this week, an abandoned manor known as Welsh Palace of Versailles went back on the market for £750,000. The Grade 1 listed Kinmel Hall near Abergale in the UK was one of the country's most prestigious estates, even visited by Queen Victoria. However, the 80,000 square foot property has tragically fallen into a state of disrepair since its construction in 1850. While many of its grand marble columns and arches remain intact, shocking photographs show crumbling brickwork and plaster falling from its walls of its vast 122 rooms. It's sad, actually. And apparently, these places have a lot of ghostly legends. From Playboy parties to ghosts that are wandering the hallways. In the rural outskirts of Glasgow lies Lennox Castle, once famous psychiatric hospital known for its wretched and dehumanizing conditions. Still says that there are patients walking through here. People were apparently back in the day struck with baseball bats and made to run laps around the castle for minor punishments. While one man even died after being found set alight in a bathroom in the middle of the night. Yeah, it finally closed in 2002. That's not very nice. Not very nice at all. Go find these haunted castles. We need to survive them. We do. Finally tonight, we've all been there. You're stuck on a never-ending video call when nature calls, but you don't want to risk bringing your laptop into the loo with you. Toilet paper maker Charmin now has the answer. The BRB bot is an app prototype that uses machine learning to create your own digital twin. So you know what that means. Literally, if you got to go potty, you throw on the BRB bot, looks like you, acts like you, and that way your bosses make sure that you're still there. They don't know the difference. In the meantime, you're playing Candy Crush in the bathroom. Thought of the Day happens every night at this time, where we ask for a question on our Facebook and Twitter pages, then read your responses on the air because we love the audience participation around here. Today's Thought of the Day is as follows. What weirds you out about the paranormal, UFOs, or cryptid world? Let's start with haunted history. Alien abductions, time slips, and demonic possession would be extremely unnerving to say the least. And the rake. Oh yes, the rake. Screaming Dean, weirded out from lost time spent scrolling through the Thought of the Dave. Ozzy's sister Ozzy. Carl weirds me out. I close the curtains early now, Dave. Wu-Tang. The fact that I filmed it on 3 separate phones and the videos remotely deletes themselves off of all 3 phones we recorded outside of God. This was Christmas Eve, midnight-ish, 2015 over Long Island. That's weird. Jurassic Joey. I find that alien abduction only happens at night is very weird, and it confuses me as to why, and why only when we are asleep. That's my time to sleep. Can't you imagine it happened during the day? Megas. Is it really worth destroying worldviews just to know the truth? I think so, but it's sad and very dangerous, I think. I agree. Moving on. Let's go over here. Kevin, black-eyed children. What a way to disarm and fool unsuspecting people. Tom, the total unknowingness about what's really going on. Gabe, the fact that these beings could go between worlds and dimensions I never dreamed there to be. Quincy, that experiences are so common and yet no concrete explanations exist. Major Lee, do aliens see ghosts too? Jonathan, the dimension next door is accessible to them but not to us. Also, the way some of us can see and experience things when the vast bulk of people can't. Gail, that aliens come right into one's home without invitation or even knocking first. That's called breaking and entering in our world, and it's unwelcome and inexcusable. You tell them, Shirky Poo. You tell them, aliens. Catherine, I just started my journey in van life 2 years ago. While in my van, sitting on my bed, my entire van started vibrating to where it looked blurred, but I myself didn't vibrate. It was like a wave of energy or something all around my van, and I was able to witness it. So unknown, scary stuff. Joe, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles freak me out. Everyone knows what they are, but no one ever sees them because they're ninjas. Byron, humans wanting to kill them. Gary, in all honesty, human psychology and the unknown fascinate me. Danny, most of the researchers are at each other's throats instead of working together. Steve, total lack of real evidence. Dave Schrader from Darkness Radio, we love Dave. The fans, man. I kid. Mike, the connection with these two, Bigfoot and aliens. Joshua, I don't know, none of it really scares me except for demons. I guess the fact that some of the stories are true is kind of reality altering. We'll leave it right there tonight. Thank you to everybody participating in the Thought of the Dave. We'll do it all again tomorrow on Facebook and Twitter. And of course, thank you to Captain Shirk for a great news wire. And to Seriah Azkath for coming on, talking all things weird and strange. We got Mr. Ron Bumblefoot Thaw rocking in the background with Little Brother is Watching. Bumblefoot is the official music of Spaced Out Radio, rocking us in and out of every single show. Get your horns up for the guitar god himself. Special thanks to everybody listening in at home, at work, in your cars, wherever you may be. Thank you to everyone participating in our chat rooms tonight on YouTube, Twitch, Twitter, hashtag Spaced Out Radio, Derek and the Snarkettes. You know where you're hanging. Spreaker, Facebook. Yeah, we got them all. Just check it on out. Remember, this show is copyright by Spaced Out Radio and SOR Media Ventures Limited. Thank you so much for choosing to share your evening with us, because together, my friends, we're watching. We own the night. Mr. Bumblefoot, we need a favor. We need you to take us home. Yes, the Woo train has docked for the night. But soon, my friends, we shall ride again. Your seats are always available. Your tickets never expire. And if you want to bring a friend, yep, we've got room for them too. Good night.
I got my daughter's hair looking tight, so we hopped in the car and went to Mickey D's to celebrate. I did my thing with these braids meal.
There's a meal for every moment on the McDonald's $1, $2, $3 menu.
Enjoy a tasty McChicken biscuit or Chicken McGriddles. Get two of the same or one of each for just $3. Prices and participation may vary. Single item at regular price cannot be combined with combo meal.
If we go to page 11 in the presentation, you'll see that we're on target to meet our quarterly
Some things never change, like nobody can resist popping plastic bubbles. And Geico saving folks lots of money on their car insurance.
As I was saying, we're on target to meet. Excuse me, Miss Hansen.
Sorry, almost done.
15 minutes could save you 15% or more.